Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
Reports first came out on August 5th of a memo being circulated widely at Google that argued that the company did not support ideological diversity and was critical of Google's efforts to address the gender disparity at the company. As an increasing number of tech companies are being criticized for being too male-dominated, hostility to diversity efforts appears to be on the rise, and the Google memo, as it's come to be called, has thrust the issue into the spotlight. Louise Batsakis, an assistant editor at Vice's Motherboard channel, broke the story about James Damore's controversial Google anti-diversity memo, and she joins us now. And Anita Hill makes a return visit to our show. She's with the law firm Cohen, Milstein, Sellers & Toll, and she recently wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about this case and other examples of gender inequality in the tech sector. Welcome, both of you, to our show.
Hi, Leonard. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Louise, when did you first hear about the memo?
So it was a couple weeks ago. I was on a Friday afternoon that I started noticing that people were talking about this inside Google. And then on Saturday morning at around 2 a.m., we broke the story. I think what was really newsworthy for Motherboard was that it was causing such backlash within the company. We heard from numerous sources within Google about how this memo was really causing an uproar.
Can you describe what's in it for the people who haven't read it?
Sure. So it's a 10-page manifesto or memo that James Damore, a former senior software engineer, wrote. It kind of blames the gender disparity in tech on inherent biological differences between men and women rather than cultural factors. I think that's kind of the overarching thesis of the piece, whereas later towards the end of it, he talks about ideological problems within Google that he sees. He feels like Google is not nice to conservatives, and he feels like they're not open to conservative viewpoints, and that he thinks there should be more diversity efforts towards rectifying that rather than focusing on gender and racial disparities.
And was it intended just for people who worked at Google?
Yeah.
Or just the men who worked at Google?
My understanding is that it was actually written about a month prior before we heard about it, but that it was kind of siloed into one mailing list. But then that week, around August 4th or 5th that we broke the story, it was, I guess, recirculated within another mailing list inside Google. And I believe, according to our sources, that it had been seen by every female engineer within the company.
Many media outlets report that he received quite a bit of support for his views at Google. Was that the majority opinion?
I'm not sure if that was the majority opinion, but we also reported that there were definitely people within the company who supported, the views of what the Damore's views, for sure.
Anita, were you surprised when you first heard of the memo?
I guess I wasn't entirely surprised, but one of the things that is clear from the reporting and from just reading the memo itself is that the diversity program that existed at Google was being used as a scapegoat. Clearly, there's no clear relationship between ideological differences and discrimination. or diversity and inclusion programs. And you can just look at what's going on throughout the Silicon Valley, which seemed to be maybe, in fact, a liberal bastion. And, in fact, what we have is evidence of an attempt at diversity and inclusion, or at least programs for diversity and inclusion, but we have clear evidence of many disparities. And when you look at the overwhelming data, you find that it's easy to conclude that there is discrimination going on. And we know that, Google is not like Fox News ideologically, but there seems to be discrimination in both places.
Even if he believed completely in what he wrote, what do you think he hoped to achieve by sending it around? I mean, putting it in writing.
I think that perhaps he had in mind that there should be greater ideological inclusion at Google. But what I believe the main purpose of the document was to really disparage any efforts at gender inclusion and to present a lot of false information or misinformation about women's capacities to do the work as engineers.
Did Google do the right thing by firing James Damore?
I think that you can make the case that you put Google in a really problematic position, because on one hand, if they had retained him as an employee, what can you do? Can you switch him to another team? Can you have him not manage people? Can you, make sure there aren't women on his team? And on the other hand, if you do fire him, I think that what you've seen is a backlash against Google for, in some people's view of silencing conservatives within the company. So I think it was really difficult, but I think it was really a routine HR decision, because Google has a vested interest in making sure that its employees are happy and productive. And I think by keeping this guy around, it was potentially undermining that.
Is it a common perception? Go ahead, Anita.
I think it's more than being happy and productive. I think that Google has decided that it is in their best interest, whether it's their legal interest, their ethical interest, or in their business interest, to have more diversity. And that an individual who openly disparages that and seems to be working against it, and you might assume that he will in the future work against it if he remained at Google, then when you have that person in the workplace, that they can undermine what has developed as a legitimate and important policy of the institution. So
completely
I believe
agree.
It's more than just keeping people happy. It's how is Google going to enforce the policies that it adopts?
I'm speaking with Louise Betsakis, an assistant editor at Vice's Motherboard Channel, and Anita Hill, who wrote an op-ed piece in the New York Times recently about this topic, but works for the law firm Cohen, Milstein, Sellers, and Toll. Are you addressing issues like this at your law firm? Are you involved in any cases? Is that what led you to even write that op-ed?
Well, I was led by my work with Cohen Milstein, certainly, but also my work as a professor, which I am still a professor at Brandeis University. I'm of counsel to Cohen Milstein, and the firm does do class action lawsuits, and that was one of the recommendations that I made in the op-ed piece that I wrote for the New York Times, looking at the problem of discrimination in the tech sectors, well, really throughout different sectors in science and in STEM. We realize that the data is so persuasive. I mean, it shows systemic problems, whether you're talking about pay gaps or whether you're talking about promotion and leadership gaps or even starting salary offers. The data is clear that there are some real disparities there. And that is a strong suggestion of discrimination that's not individual or about one or two people, employees, or one or two managers. And so what we need really is a systemic solution. And very often the only way to get that systemic solution is through class actions that cover a range of problems, a range of individuals, and then offer solutions in the end that can change the culture and climate and the systems at an employer.
The disparity between men and women in tech companies is connected to education and the number of women in STEM fields. Has the Title IX law been used to bring more women into STEM fields?
Title IX has been used. Unfortunately, some of the disparities that we see and some of the climate issues that we see are also present in colleges and universities in these programs. And so Title IX is the law that protects against educational discrimination. But the problems seem to continue once women get into the professions. I mean, there's sort of this whole, not only a pipeline of women going through, but a pipeline of experiences that hamper them from having successful careers. And often that results in higher attrition rates, whether it's whether it's in schools or in the workforces, that women leave. In engineering, women leave at a rate that is twice men leaving from engineering, whether it's in the school or in the profession. So the problem isn't just about schools, nor is it just about what's happening in businesses. The problem extends throughout the entire careers of women, and then sort of exacerbates and compounds by the time you have women in a position to go into leadership.
But haven't there been studies about how women in STEM fields are treated while they're in school and once they graduate? Are there disparities between men and women's salaries within academia as well?
The salary information is there, and that's what I'm saying. The salary is there from the time women are in training and getting offers in training positions. But they're also there when women start in business, so that they get offers for as much as 30 to 40%, and in some cases even 50%. In some science areas, as much as 50% less of the starting salaries that men get. The data from the piece in the New York Times shows that women in engineering starting salaries, 63% of the women got lower starting salary offers than comparable men going into engineering and into tech. So all of those figures are there. I think what we have to do, though, is recognize that it is still difficult for women to come forward individually.
Louise, despite all of that, is it a common perception among men in the tech industry that they're being discriminated against and that companies are lowering the bar on expertise in order to meet quotas?
Yes, I do believe that there's a consensus that women get more favorable treatment among some men in the tech industry. I think also when you're talking about lawsuits, I think that one of the reasons we thought that this memo was newsworthy is that Google is currently under investigation for the Department of Labor for what two agency officials characterized as one of the worst pay gaps they've ever seen. So I think it's important to put the memo in that context in a company like Google, where, a federal agency is poking at what they perceive to be a serious problem within the organization. But yeah, I do talk, I hear from men frequently that feel like they're being discriminated against, or that, women or minorities get preferential treatment in these fields.
Because race is also a factor here.
The first thing we're going to do to, I think, stop racism and stop focusing on racism.
Stop focusing on racism.
Context of White Supremacy
Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, August 24th, 2017. So I have been told I am a little out of practice with our Thursday workplace racism. I will see if I can nab Stacy on the go here. All right, see if we can add her. It's been 2 weeks. She might be out of practice as well. Thursday, workplace racism, our weekly broadcast. It's been 2 weeks since we have done our Thursday workplace, or 3 weeks actually. I had 2 weeks where I was not able to broadcast. I've had really agonizing back pain for about 2 weeks, maybe a smidge over 2 weeks, but thankfully this weekend was the turning point where I started to feel a little bit better each day, and I'd say today I am feeling better than I have been in quite some time. Seems like I am headed towards recovery, but thanks for all of the well wishes. Certainly feeling well enough to broadcast. So we are here for our workplace racism segment. We'll be here tomorrow for Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, and Saturday for the compensatory call-in. We have lots of reshuffling for programs that were missed. Pam was supposed to be back with us, and we had a white guest who was supposed to be with us as well, some other programs, but we will reshuffle and just add that to the September calendar as we proceed. As usual with workplace racism, and I guess I would even pause to recognize that the past couple of weeks, people did in fact call in last week to share with the free HD line. If people call in, you can access the conference call. So even though I was not present and there was no broadcast and it wasn't recorded, people were able to call in and speak with one another, which I thought was just really constructive and made me feel good because I think it is important. The workplace racism broadcast, we've been doing it for a little over, well, as a separate program, we've been doing it for a little over a year. And it used to be a part of the compensatory call-in, and it had been for some years, I think since at least 2013. But I think it's extremely important. And in fact, just for comparison's sake, the number of times that I have heard major conversations on NPR and other major outlets, that was on New York Public Radio, where they are talking exclusively about problems that they will say women, but in my view, what they really mean is problems that white women are facing on the job. They will have tons of these conversations. I remember this broke out, if folks recall, in 2014, before Michael Brown Jr. and Eric Garner, and even Donald Sterling. There was the big brouhaha, or right about the same time as Donald Sterling, there was the big brouhaha about Jill Abramson. She's a white female suspected racist. She was the former editor at the New York Times, and she was fired. And it was the same type of conversation, and they're keeping white women down, and why won't they let white women get ahead, and the pay gap, and the same sort of thing. I've played a segment on workplace racism. I played a segment earlier this year where it was Susan Fowler. They mentioned her in that broadcast. Susan Fowler, the problems that she allegedly had at Uber that resulted in, I think, dozens of people being fired, and same thing, all these allegations of sexual harassment and white women being mistreated in these tech companies. And I would just ask, when have you heard that same type of investment and talking about issues with regards to racism in the workplace? The only time that I could think of was earlier this year. I think when the reporter, I forget her name, I'm a victim of racism, but the black female reporter, when she had the incident with Donald Trump, where he made some sort of crude remark that a lot of people thought was racist. And I think that was the same week that Congresswoman Maxine Waters, that some race soldier, I think at Fox News or one of those channels, made some sort of disparaging remark about Congresswoman Waters. And they had a big conversation about black women and racism on the job, which I thought was constructive, and I played segments from that dialogue on workplace racism. But even that was not just racism that black people experience on the job, black males and black females. Even that was limited in the way that that conversation was given. I think that that is extremely important, extremely significant, and why this broadcast is important, why I commend the folks who participated last week and the week before, even though I was not able to go. The number, if you would like to dial in, 641-715-3640. The code 564943 pound. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. Number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564943 pound. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. And yes, in that clip, it was that Anita Hill, victim of racism, white supremacy. Seems she might also be a victim of sexual harassment in the workplace. We talk about that a lot as well. But yes, that Anita Hill, that's who you heard in this segment. For one other quick thing that I wanted to get in about that segment, and then we can move forward. They were talking about class action lawsuits as a strategy to deal with white women being mistreated on the job. I think that could be a potential strategy for victims of racism, white supremacy on the job as well. However, for that to work in either case, you would need data. While we talk about if you can have a recorder, if that's an option that will work for you in your job setting, or at least taking good workplace notes about what was said, dates, times, names, if you can have other witnesses to, this was said at this date and time. I even say, hey, sometimes you can just ask the person to repeat what they said and write it down so that you can get it correct. Some folks are very brazen, and sometimes they're not really, or particularly if this is something that ends up not being used until a year later. Sometimes, people will be that brazen, and they will stand by their work. You're right. That's what I said. And, then you can get it exactly, verbatim, as they say. But you would need documentation for those class action lawsuits to be effective. That said, I will remind folks, since we haven't been here for a while, this broadcast is not intended for spectators. I'm pretty sure if you are a black person, non-white person anywhere in the universe, if you have a job, have had a job, you have had some experiences with workplace racism, so you should be able to participate. This is not for entertainment to just tune in while we wait for the return of whatever we would be watching on Thursday in Scandal. That's a Thursday nighter and all the other nonsense while we wait for all that stuff to return this fall. To tune in and listen to black people suffering on the job. This is about thinking of strategies, codification that will help neutralize racist attacks on the job. If you figured out some things that work, you should be on speed dial. And one of the first people to tune in and share details. If you're having problems, great. You can share, or not great, but you certainly have folks who are willing and anxious to try to help, or offer any thoughts or analysis to help you improve your situation. And certainly if you've dialed in before to talk about things that you're dealing with, dial back in. We always appreciate updates because that lets us know what things work, what things don't. Even if you dial in and reject everything that you hear and you think for yourself, fantastic. Let us know what you came up with and if it was successful for you. You can always email if you don't want to call the email, untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. We can keep it anonymous if you just want to write in, or if you have commentary on things that have been shared, we could do it that way, where you could just drop an email and we can read your commentary on the broadcast this evening as we proceed. We have a backlog a little bit from the past few weeks of people writing in workplace racism commentary, so I'll try and include those. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get them all in, but I will do my best. We had someone who wrote on Facebook. Their Facebook issue was that they had a race soldier on the job who would do a lot of slang talk when they came to address them. So, and we've talked about this before, hey, Skippy B and Smoothie Joe, what are you doing, man? How's your crew getting along? At that type of thing, And they don't do that for anybody else. They just save that for when they come to talk to this black person. And so he was asking, what to do. And some of the folks commented on the page. And variety of suggestions, which is great about counter racism. You can pick what's going to work best for you. Where some people said you can deal with that by just saying courteously, Helen, Mr. Smith, Jonathan, whatever his name is. I would prefer if you just call me by my name every time that you speak with me. That seemed to be the core issue, was all this nonsense and calling him some other name. Like I said, Smoothie B. If you could just, call me my name every time, I would appreciate it. And I might not respond if you are not calling me by my name. I try to call everyone here, or I do call everyone here by their name, and I would appreciate it if that could be reciprocated. Much obliged, or whatever, something close to that. Other folks said, hey, just take note that this is happening. I think that was Mr. Steele. Take note. We just talked about having data. Take note that this is happening. And if it continues to happen, once you pile up, 10, 15 instances of this sort of behavior, you could be sitting in a pretty nice position in terms of how you want to proceed with dealing with this. If you want to, go contact someone or however you want to proceed with matters, but just document this is happening and try to accumulate as many of these instances as possible. I know Mr. Fuller has talked about this as well, because you can accumulate other instances as well. If other things are happening from this person or other people, that way you can show evidence of a toxic work environment, as they say. Getting to some of the emails that have piled up. Let's see. Email number 1. I just had an encounter with a suspected workplace racist. I am the one who wrote in before about my former supervisor talking loudly about working in his yard in the summer and was sweating like a nigger. I've had a few encounters over the years with this other person, a short, bald, and stocky white male manager of another department. A little black background. I'm a black male. 20 years ago, there's been about 10 to 15 blacks and about the same number of Hispanics, quote unquote, out of about 300 people total at an engineering company. Due to downsizing, now I am one of 2 blacks out of about 90 people. There are historical pictures of the company outings from 70 to 80 years back of an all-white company. This is, wow, now that sort of thing would be great in a work environment if they have pictures of, the employees over the years, so you can see, and in this case you have a longer work history for that particular company. Wow, great way to do some covert counter-racist study. Continuing. The suspect manager, who is now married to the white HR director, for the past 10 years or so, had challenged me to a one-on-one basketball game when I first came over to management from the factory over 18 years ago. Since then, we have played basketball many times with the guys after work. Many times, and about 80% of the times we played, I'm the only black guy. There's never been more than 5 black guys playing. He picks the teams all the time. He always has to be in control. Only once was I on his team. He's never violent, always helpful, but likes to joke around. Years ago, we were in the bathroom together at the urinals, and he asked me, "How deep is the water?" Dr. Welsing moment. Woo! Always gets to the genital level. I didn't know how to respond, and then said, "Those jokes don't work with me," and that was the end of that conversation. He has always challenged me to sports games at the company picnics. It's always a contest in sports, especially with me, it seems. Now let's go to the hair issue. Now this is with a black male. How interesting. I've always kept my hair short, but decided to let my hair grow to about a year back into a really small afro once before. My kids convinced me to go with the nappy patty style for a bit. I cut it again and now letting it grow out again. This time allowing it to curl instead of an afro or nappy patty. So he has commented a few times over the last year that I need to get a haircut. A couple of weeks ago, he comments that my hair is getting long. I respond that his is getting shorter. Again, remember, as he is bald on top. He jokes a little about his baldness, then I walk away. I've been listening to the cows for about 6 months and advising my son on how to handle workplace racism on his job. Music to my ears. My advice to him is to stay in the question lane. In my downtime, I think to myself questions that I can respond with to this racist suspect and others. So I have my questions ready so the next time he comments about my hair. Today, sure enough, here it comes. That was my the way my cubicle is positioned, people can walk by and look directly in at me. So I saw someone in my peripheral vision walk back by my office. Then I hear him talking to someone else a few cubicles down from me. They end their conversation and I hear footsteps start walking back towards my cubicle. I don't look up because I know it's him and I feel he's potentially going to say something about my hair again. I see him walk by as I'm staring at my computer monitor. I sense he looks in at me. He walks by and the few footsteps stop. The footsteps are coming back in my direction, comes back to my cubicle, looks in and says, "Man, your hair is getting long." I respond loud enough so others can hear me, but not mad or with an attitude. Nice and slowly, with a smile, I ask, "Do you find it interesting, as I do, that you take notice of my hair?" He says, "No, it's just for years you have never let it get this long." He moves in closer to me within about 2 feet to get a closer look at my hair. I say, "So you have been noticing my hair for years?" "Yes, you are a brother with hair." "A what?" "A brother." I say, "A brother? What does that mean?" He smirks, looks down, shaking his head. "You know. Come on, roll with it." I say, "I want to make sure I understand. Roll with what?" He smiles. "Come on. Why can't I pick on you?" "Because I am not to be picked on," he says, smiling. "Come on. It goes both ways," as he rubs his bald head. "What goes both ways?" Then he quickly changes the subject. "So what's been going on?" Answering your question with a question. Standard racist tactic. Then I talk work-related stuff. We exchange a little work-related conversation. Then he asks about my son. Yeah. Then there's small talk about my son in college, his kids' school debt, and another manager's kid getting a good partial sports scholarship. Then he walks away. Immediately, I go to my email to start typing this email to submit to workplace racism on the cows. I considered him a friend. Ugh. We have laughed, worked, played, joked in times past, but my comments to him have never been about color. I only responded in a joking manner back to his baldness whenever he jokingly commented about my hair. So now I get it. Suspected racists will lure you into joking with them so that when they make a racist comment or joke, you will laugh at it as well so that it doesn't come off as racist. So do I go to HR about this? Remember, he's married to her. Oh, man. One other quick scenario. About 10 weeks back, the lights went out during the day while at work and the whole place was pretty dark except for the emergency lights. It was about at least 20 minutes. We got up and walked around our cubicles into the halls. One white person said to me, "Smile," insert name, "so I can see you." Ha 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 ha. I responded, "Smile so I can see you." Since I have been listening to the cows, I have replayed the encounters and wow, me, blacks, Indians, Hispanics, and Asians have been the brunt of occasional white jokes and comments for a long time. Those racist jokes abound. You could have been writing all those down. In the past, I have rolled with it and laughed along. Being the only black person in most of the department I have been in, I never connected the behavior to racism. That's most of us. Oh, wait a minute. The cows is helping me gird up and learn how to counter the behavior because when you work in a predominantly white work environment, racist jokes and comments are bound to happen. Guaranteed. Absolutely. He welcomes any comments or suggestions. I would just be documenting the racist jokes and behavior. If you all have 90 employees in the company or about 100 employees or so, I don't know if you all have meetings, what have you, like once a month staff meetings or at least like department meetings or what have you. It's one of those maybe you could try. We've heard this before. Just asking, what is our code of conduct? You can refer to your policy and procedure to see if they have a section that covers what is acceptable behavior for the workplace. Do they have a section about making what they might term it as offensive remarks and that sort of thing, or just conduct that is not becoming of a professional work environment? You can check to see if they have any sections there, and just ask, what's the procedure for dealing with this sort of thing? Do we even need a refresher to make sure that everyone is aware of what is permissible to say in the workplace? And the reason that I like that asking publicly, you're not indicting anybody, and it's not making it I'm going to HR because I'm being mistreated. I'm just asking a general question about something we should all be concerned about, right? If this is something that's in policy and procedure, or if we're all expected to conduct ourselves in a certain way, let's make sure that everybody is aware of how we're supposed to behave in this environment. That's why I'm a fan of that way of handling it. And the people that know they are about violating this policy, I like to tell nigger jokes, on my smoke break and at lunch and every other time. It already puts them on alert, like, oh, wait a minute. This nigger's trying to mess up. It already serves that purpose. And sometimes, even if they don't do the training, it might get them to quiet down or at least not do this around you. They'll wait until you leave and be like, that nigger's trying to come in here and mess things. That's what you can expect. Folks have suggestions for the person that just wrote in. If you have your own things you would like to share, number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564943 pound. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Folks who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open. Feel free to participate.
Evening. Can I proceed?
Yes, sir. Oh.
Yes, greetings to the host. Greetings to the listeners. It's Lamine, Kansas City. Been a while since I've been able to call into the program. Forgive the background noise. I'm outside. My girls are about to go to sleep. Yes, I don't have any suggestions for I do have suggestions. Record everything. Use a phone recorder. I don't care what HR says. Record everything. Use spy equipment if possible. Racism is war. Therefore, using these dominators' rules to go by is not going to be effective. I'm a firm believer. I am self-employed.
Sir, your volume is going up and down. Like it's fluctuating really bad. Like we can hear you, but it'll be fine, and then it'll kind of go really low, and then it'll go back up. Is there any way you can kind of stabilize it?
Is that better?
Give us a couple sentences.
Is it better? Can you hear me? Is that better?
Sounds stable so far.
Okay. Yes, what I was saying was my advice to the person who wrote the letter in is to record everything. Use your phone to record everything possible. I've become very adept at using my voice recorder on my phone very discreetly and positioning my phone just nonchalantly where conversations are recorded. All of my phone calls are recorded. It's got to the point where I have thanked the creator many times, just remembering to do those types of things, as well as documenting. I'm not as good as documenting. I do have to say that, but I do give advice to use recording devices, video recording, if at all possible. I recently had a client secretly recording me in his home. And of course, I had nothing. There was nothing I was doing wrong, but he told me he had secret recordings of me. And I was like, hey, that's good for you. It's, know not to mess with you. But I did want to share a brief experience. As stated previously, I'm self-employed, quote unquote, and I have a small business doing repair work, contracting, handyman work here in the Kansas City area. I am currently doing a project for a relatively young suspected racist white male. He is a developer. I'm not really sure what that means, but I'm starting to believe real estate developer, should be equated with practices racism. I really am starting to believe that phrase developer and practicing racism in the area of housing is they're very closely linked. That's the conclusion that I've come to. But his title he gives himself is a developer. He's about 28, maybe 30 years of age. So we're pretty close in age. He is currently developing an apartment building, which is located on a large avenue in the Kansas City area. There's a street well known in this city by the name of Troost, which is typically known as the racial divide in the city. Kansas City being a classic example of racist man abusing non-white people, specifically black people, in the area of housing. So there's a street by the name of Troost. This is actually on the other side of Troost. So this is considered the black area of Kansas City, which there have been several documentaries about the street and the divide. But this is east of Troost in the quote-unquote black area of the city, where a lot of white people are deciding to make the city their home. So as Mr. Fuller has stated, black people, they just move us around. White people want to move. They just move black people around. And this is no different. It's involved me because he has contracted me to do work on this unit. Now, he's already revealed to me that his purpose was to evict the current tenants. There's 12 current tenants in this building, all non-white, black people. And they have been staying in this building, some of them for up to 20 years. He has purchased the building recently from the previous owner, which is a non-white black male, very old. He was a elderly, very seasoned brother who was about 80 years of age, who decided to sell the building and get out of management of this building, and he sold it to this young suspected racist. He purchased the building and now has decided to every month evict one of the tenants until the year period. All 12 tenants are gone. He is developing this unit, quote unquote, for young professionals, which again, in my field, I've come to equate certain phrases with certain activities. And the word young professionals, you might as well say white, because they're not looking to fill these homes with more black people, more dark bodies. I have been contracted. I do feel, and I'm almost asking for ideas or thoughts. I do feel a conflict. I do understand that in the system of racism, white supremacy, I will be used to do all type of things. However, we can be complicit. We can use what little agency we have to decide, in some cases, whether we can participate. But I have been working with this suspected racist and doing this work. He pays on time, and the project is literally, since it's on the black side of the city, it's down the street from my home. I've been doing work with him. I have noticed, though, that he has wanted to distance himself. He has told me several times not to give his phone number to the tenants of the building. I mean, this is just openly practicing racism, and I have no doubt that he will and is practicing racism when dealing with me. So I try to keep that in mind as much as possible when we're doing dealings. However, he does try to come across, quote unquote, friendly, amiable. But I understand what he's doing, and I believe that when we talk about this gentrification, as it's called, it's just practicing racism, and that's my inside thoughts on that issue. But I do welcome any thoughts on how to proceed with someone in this position, or if any of the other victims would do business in a situation. Thank you, and I'll listen to the rest of the program.
That's interesting. I think this is something we have talked about before, and I've heard a variety of viewpoints on it. Where some people say that, hey, black self-respect says if that's what this guy's doing, and just go and toss out these black families, black residents, black tenants, to toss them out and bring in these young racists, racial dislocation. To do that and to say, hey, I'm not going to participate at all. You can find somebody else to do this. I think some other people, I could certainly see the perspective of, hey, if you have a job, if you're alive at all, if you're paying taxes, whatever you're doing, you're supporting the system of racism, white supremacy in some way, shape, form. So, you can just, I mean, continue in that manner to do what you're doing and just try to learn as much as you can. If you can do anything to try to aid the folks that are there, at least in terms of information, maybe, or if there's anything that you can do that's makes sense, that would be helpful, that would not endanger you or your employment or anything, maybe that would be helpful. Maybe folks have other suggestions about how to deal with it, but I mean, that's the system of racism, white supremacy. Most of us, if not all, non-white people, if we are employed, even if you're not employed, you're going to be helping, aiding, and abetting racist man, racist woman, racist child. And great being diligent with your recording devices. I think a lot of listeners have picked that up. And you should just assume that you're being recorded. I think Thomas in New York had said that before, 909, with all of the gadgetry and what have you that is available now. And I would say, especially if you're, self-employed, as they say, and you end up working in a white person's residence in their house. Oh, man. Assume, yes, you're being recorded at all times. Maybe even if you have to use the bathroom, assume you are being recorded. Absolutely. Did folks have any suggestions for our caller, entrepreneur, who just dialed in? Any suggestions for his situation? Anyone thinks he's a no-count coon and needs to quit right now, sell out for, helping this white guy tear down?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir, Mr. Steele.
Yes, this is Ken Steele, and I'm reporting from Los Angeles this evening. Or I think I'm in Santa Monica, sorry. Anyway, so in this particular situation, I would seriously consider gathering any sort of incriminating data that you may have of this person violating any sort of the housing laws in your state. If he's making any sort of violation, from there, I would just go to a PR person and have this person's name put in the newspaper so that he's publicly documented as a person, as an agent of gentrification. I'm sure that in subsequent years, sometime later, that will be that may be a mark of shame at some point. But in the short term, if you can get any sort of information that is incriminating that he is breaking or violating any of the laws, you could be saving the homes of your fellow victims or our fellow victims. And so, yeah, I suggest gathering the data. If he's breaking any sort of laws, gather the data and get in touch with a PR person, and then tell your story and all of the information that you have to them, and then see if it has any legs, or see if it's I guess worth publishing. And you can even go to your local newspaper. I'm sure there's some sort of investigative reporter. You can go ahead and tip them off, even anonymously, as to what you suspect is going on with this individual.
Appreciate that, Mr. Steele. We have, excuse me, we have other folks who dialed in who had commentary for our entrepreneur who dialed in with this situation, working for this, seems like race soldier who is dislocating a lot of black tenants. Any other folks who had suggestions for him specifically?
Hello, may I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, this is Red from Ohio. Thank you for taking my call. I'm just actually curious about the last caller situation as far as how is this man able to evict or even have this plan to evict these tenants, especially if they're paying their rent on time. I know like here in Ohio, there's like a whole process and it takes, it can take, up to like 60 days, like anywhere between like, maybe 30 to 60 days to evict people. So I'm definitely concerned about that. And then basically just echoing the comments of Gus and Mr. Steele, seeing if there is some type of law against it. And I don't know how much time you do have to devote to the situation, but even anonymously, maybe alerting, a tenant if you do feel like you can maybe trust one of them or like maybe leaving a note or something along those lines. I definitely am one to not really trust very many people, if anybody, but it definitely seems like that it doesn't seem correct. And I've also heard that same terminology, like young professionals, which just young white people. And I'm wondering if maybe that's a way that he's able to get around not being or potentially not being sued because he's using young professionals instead of blatantly saying whites only. I'll wait later on to, I guess, add my commentary about my situation. Thank you.
That was one thing
Also,
I forgot to hang on one second. That was one thing I forgot to say from the very beginning. They didn't mention the term white in the opening segment either. They had all that talk about women facing racial discrimination or facing sexism in the workplace at Google and the tech industry, and they were talking about talking to men who feel resentment that women and minorities are getting all these quote unquote privileges in the workplace. I don't think that she talked to or they talked to a whole bunch of black males or Indian males or Latino quote unquote males. I suspect it was probably a lot of white men, maybe exclusively white men, who would have that sort of viewpoint on their gripes in the workplace, but that is consistent where they're not identifying, finding some way of not identifying white people specifically. In fact, that same terminology, if folks remember Katrina after the flood, Gary Rivlin, he had that term in the book. It was YERPs that they were using down in New Orleans for the exact same thing. It was young, urban, I forgot it was some young urban something professionals, but these were the invaders who were coming in and stealing all of the real estate space in New Orleans post Katrina. You go back Katrina after the flood. He mentioned it when he was a guest on the program, and he uses that term specifically in the book. But the exact same phenomenon post Katrina. Hang on one second, Mr. Steele. Are there other folks who dialed in that we've not heard from who had commentary they wanted to offer, any suggestions they wanted to offer for the male caller situation? Oh, wait a minute. I guess give him a chance since Red did ask a question. Did you want to respond? She had a question about, is this legal? How is he able to proceed with evicting a tenant a month?
Yes, I believe that what is being done, the apartments are being remodeled. And so whenever their leases are...
Your audio is fluctuating again? Your audio is fluctuating.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to be outside. Coincidentally, and this is not workplace racism, but racism in the black neighborhood or the neighborhood with black people I live in, there's poor cell phone service with all providers. So that's very interesting. Anyway, yes, when their leases are expiring, he is not renewing them. And then the apartments are being remodeled, which was where I come in. And when the units are remodeled, the pricing on them go about $500 up from what they've been for about the past 20 years. So many of the residents cannot afford to pay the new lease rates or rent rates, and therefore they are forced to leave. I did take into consideration some of the what the previous callers have said regarding trying to help out some of the tenants. I do think that some of these older tenants have a hard time keeping quiet, so I'm not really sure they're like the ones I want to run up on and try to, hey, look, you're gonna go, but I want to be discreet as possible. Hopefully, you'll use me for the project, and I could do as much good as possible. So far, I've just been used to do the remodel, and yeah, it's tough, but it's work. Thank you.
I have heard that before, where they go in and this will be urban renewal. We're gonna make this place all nice and spiffy and put in new this and new that, and oh yeah, your rent has now increased 1,000%. Oh, it's too well. We will get you some boxes. Heard that before, and you have no say so about the refurbishings. Like you can't say, well, no, I want to opt out of that. I'll just keep it. Nope, no option on that at all. Now, the other folks who dialed in, any other folks have suggestions for the male entrepreneur situation? I guess other folks dialed in for themselves. Mr. Steele, did you have another suggestion for our entrepreneur here?
Oh yeah, there is another avenue that you can pursue is the legal route. I've been in situations where where landlords have attempted to force me out of a space that I was renting, and I always, I was, kind of scrambling as to, what are my options. And one of the things that people can do is they can go to a housing attorney or an attorney that handles, real estate disputes. They can definitely slow down the eviction process. And they can also sue for damages if you're entitled to any. So in the situation that I mentioned previously, I actually, yes, I had to agree to leave, but that wasn't until after they paid me my full deposit, and not only my full deposit, they paid me, I believe it was the value of 3 months' rent. And that was because of certain conditions that were in the unit, and that was just a condition that of me leaving. They really wanted me out of there, and I really didn't want to go. But yeah, they paid me a lot of money before everything was said and done, and some of that was even for relocation. So if you can have, inform an attorney about the situation that's going on there, and perhaps they can go in and find out if there's any benefit for them to render services to any of the victims that are being forcibly removed. That's just something from my personal experience. Thank you.
Indeed. Other folks, appreciate everyone's suggestions. I guess I should try and get some of these, this backlog of written commentary. And let me read one of these, and then we'll get other folks who dialed in with commentary as well. Let's see. Okay. I was listening to the compensatory call-in and heard a black parent who was concerned about a Confederate flag in the classroom. This was 2 weeks ago. I agree with the advice that was given. I would add that if the teacher conducts acts of racism while teaching the math class, it should all be documented. I would also say that if she wants to act on the documentation that she collects about this teacher, she should go directly to the school board or the superintendent and not the teacher or school staff. There is a higher chance of action being taken that way. Also, if the school has a teachers union, she will need ample evidence for any type of action against this teacher, so collecting evidence and remaining professional is ideal. If it gets bad, she should at least request a teacher change and use the evidence collected to connect it to her child's mental and emotional health. Great suggestions. And that was, I believe, 2 weeks ago on the compensatory call-in. We had a Georgia black mother dialed in with her high school daughter, where her math teacher had a Confederate flag brazenly displayed on her desk, the teacher's front desk. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up that we've not heard from, you all have commentary?
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
For the gentleman that's the entrepreneur, I'm not trying to condone what the white man is possibly doing, but I would act as a sort of like an intelligence officer and just continue to glean more information from him, because I know that white people normally have access to information that, blacks don't normally have access to. So if he could just continue talking to him and, maybe, I don't know, just somehow just getting more information from him, I think that would be a good tactic.
Right on. Appreciate that. Yeah, I agree. A la Dan Freeman, the spook who sat by the door, gathering more intel. That makes sense. And we do have a massive information deficit system of white supremacy. Other folks, if you have commentary, I guess we did have some people who participated, but they were only giving suggestions. So if you have your own situation, you should feel free to participate as well.
May I be heard?
We'll get the female caller first and then the male caller.
Okay, well, thank you for letting me speak again. This is Red from Ohio. Just a couple of things, or a couple of observations. The first one is actually something that happened with my mother at her job. She basically works in like a somewhat of a call center type of setting, and they decided to, her upper management or whomever, someone above her, decided to disband her area, and she is in a supervisor position, particularly like a specialized supervisor position. So they decided to disband her area and move the task that she would typically do to other people or to other supervisors. So when they had the meeting, because it's her and I, from my understanding, she said that she's actually the only non-white black person, or at least she's the only black person in that area who's a supervisor. And the vice president of her company, who is about 3 levels above her, had told basically everyone except for her that they would be just basically transferred to a different area. So they would still be in a supervisor position. And so that way there would be no disruption with the job. And she had told me that some of the other people, they didn't really want to do that. I'm not sure what they decided, she didn't tell me like what they wanted to do, but that was basically the case with some of the people. So she ends up, and but they are told that they still have to apply. So she hears from her manager, what have you, that the vice president, he is looking for particular type of candidate who have diplomas now, who have went to college. And, that's not a problem because my mother, she has 2 degrees. But the odd thing, and the clip that you played earlier, it made me think about like her situation, because I assume that with white men, and the vice president is a white man, I assume that he would have some type of college degree or something. And she told me that he actually doesn't have even a college degree. And at first I was surprised, and then it just falls in line with, system of racism, white supremacy, how you can be a vice president just because you know someone else within the company, and yet you want to make sure that you have supervisors who went to college. The other situation actually at my job is that it's basically the same thing, where my supervisor, a suspected racist, he also doesn't, I assume that he went to college, and he also didn't go to college. So and he's also basically, I feel like using the his supervisor position now, basically as a stepping stone to move up in the company. I definitely come to that conclusion as to why he's putting so much stress on, his I guess his team, like, his associates, what have you. The last thing is that I've been trying to be more codified, especially with the Black people that I work with. And the situation that came up as to why I'm no longer friends with a particular white woman. This is the same white woman who would, harass me by touching me. So I was able to, and I'm not sure if this is the right way to go about it or not, but I was able to basically tell the Black person that it's not because she said that, the reason why I didn't want to be her friend, be the white woman's friend anymore is because she was white. I'm like, no, and I just picked out other reasons. So that's actually all I have to share this week. Thank you.
Wow. That's wow. I guess your situation, that's very important in my opinion. Anytime that it seems like they're using words to suggest that you are a racist, that you don't like white people, or you did this because this person is white. I would really correct that immediately. I think that happened last week where somebody was trying to suggest that a Black person was racist or did something because they didn't like the white people on the job. And no, that's not what's happening here. And this person actually was mistreating me and violating my personal space. So I don't know what that has to do with race. I don't know what that has to do with her being white, unless you know something I don't. You could be back to the question lane. And with your mom situation, that sounds like the template of racism, white supremacy. If this is some Edward Snowden, well, I guess we don't know if he's a high school dropout, but certainly no high school degree. You don't have to have all the credentials if you are white in a system of racism, white supremacy, and then using racism to further boost himself up the ladder. He'll stress out and pluck the nerves of all of his black team, I don't even know what you call them, team members. He'll get on all of them and stress your mom out and what have you, show he can really get on them. And that'll be how he can move up the ladder in, I guess, his work team or that work environment. Seems like standard racist operating procedure. The male caller who dialed in simultaneously or spoke up simultaneously, did you have commentary, sir?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, everyone. Greetings, host. This commentary is in reference to the email that you read earlier with the individual who was speaking with the person, I believe they used the word friend, who has balding hair, and they were thinking about growing out their hair. That term friend is a particular word that I believe that victims of racism should begin to reframe immediately, whether at work or not, and with all types of people. It's just being careful with how certain concepts and language that racists use and how we use them. For myself, just as part of my code, I keep friendship and work separate. That has just always been a thing. It's something that I learned watching adults growing up. And besides work, just that term friend or friendship, I have a certain criteria, 2 criteria. The first criteria is unless you can speak intelligently about the intimate parts of my life, we're not friends. So if we're talking about, the football game, that's all we're talking about. That doesn't make you my friend. And then the second criteria I use is if I can trust that individual to make decisions on my behalf as if they were me, which requires a level of connection, then we're not friends. So, and this is just, people are free to do whatever they want. But given that criteria, if you transpose that over all the people you work with, you're probably most likely going to see that none of these individuals are your friend. That can be very treacherous territory to traverse when you start getting into the friendship work element. As far as documenting and using recording devices, there are excellent devices. The first thing I would say is, depending upon what state you are in, look up what the state law is. You have some states that are a one-party consent law, and some states are a two-party consent law. If you are in a two-party consent state, that means that if you are recording, you must inform by law the other people who are being recorded. If you are in a one-party consent state, as long as you are present, you are a party of that recording. What that means is that you actually have to be present with the recording device. So you can't plant it and then walk off. That doesn't count as a one-party consent. I actually have a device that I use. It records 19 hours of audio. And just as a daily habit routine, on my way to work, I turn it on. Don't turn it off until I get home. I have a very good filing system as far as these recordings. I also use certain app on my phone for calendars. I will say where I was that day, what I did that day, what was said, what was not said, just so I can reference, go back and reference what happened at work. I will also share a scenario that happened with me at work recently. I was questioned by a suspected racist, and he greeted me during the morning. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? Not much. Just working. Oh, hey, by the way, have you seen so and so? So and so is my direct supervisor. And I said, no, I haven't seen so and so. And he said, oh, okay. Well, let me ask you this: what are you going to do with this material when you're finished handling it? And this, for me, this was an awakening. And for whatever reason, I didn't tell him what I was going to do with the material. But I said, what would you like me to do with the material? And he said, oh, well, I just want to make sure you guys are doing the right thing because per code and policy, this, that, and this, we could get in trouble, and that means that there could be ramifications and consequences. And in the middle of this exchange with this person, it actually kind of scared me. Because what I realized right in the middle of this exchange was that this person just wasn't curious. They weren't curious at all. What they were doing was they were interrogating me. And the reason they were interrogating me is because I was being implicated. And so from that moment forward, I always consider a suspected racist, if they are asking questions of any kind, I just consider it an interrogation because I just, when I'm around them, I just assume that I'm always being implicated. They can be very tricky that way. So, just have your, just always be thinking and try as much as be deliberate actions as possible when you're dealing with individuals, especially at work. Now I'll mute my line.
Wow. Very important point, in my opinion. Very important point about that interrogation from your kind of personal experience. That I think, unfortunately, that is the system of racism, white supremacy. Because I suspect a lot of us have had situations. That's why I say too frequently on the program. When you bump into a white person, badge or no, it can be real dangerous because a whole lot of times they are not coming just for idle chit chat or hey, what's up, and just getting it. They have an agenda that is connected to the practice of white supremacy. It has nothing. No intentions, no positive intentions for you as a black person. That is consistent. That's unfortunate, but I mean, that's just the world that we live in. And then, like I said, on a personal level, I think a whole lot of us can remember times where, yeah, we thought, we were just having a conversation with this white person, and then maybe too late down the road, it's, oh, wait a minute, they had an agenda here. They're trying to get me in trouble about something here. Like, man, it's very important to just be alert and have that mindset. These are not my friends. These are not my homies. These are not even my coworkers. These are race soldiers that, we share the same space for a set amount of hours each week. And I'm just trying to navigate the day in the safest way possible. Other folks who dialed in, who had commentary they wanted to share, if you wanted to comment on what you've heard thus far, if you had your own situation, line should be open. Proceed.
Oh, sorry.
Let's see. I think Thomas in New York, and the female caller, will get our female caller first.
Oh, thank you very much, and good evening to the COWS listeners and to the host. I have a couple of things that I wanted to share. I'm going to try to be really, really quick. Something that just happened a few minutes ago with my doctor. I went to the doctor yesterday. I don't know if this will be classified as workplace racism, but it could also be, it kind of conjures up a little bit of medical apartheid. I went to my doctor yesterday, and my doctor was just very enthusiastic to perform an allergy test on me. She's like, hey, you know what? I got this new allergy test. Do you want to do this? And I was like, no, not really, because I kind of know what I'm allergic to. No. But there are other things that you could be allergic to, so let's just do this. I just got this new test in, so let me try it. And very reluctantly, I said, okay, sure, try it. Now, it was very uncomfortable. It was like teeth, like, those plastic pronged teeth. She was just sticking into me. She was sticking into me really hard. It gets dipped in a liquid because these are, I guess, like different allergen or antigen simulants of whatever allergens are out there, and then they push it into your skin, this liquid into your skin. So after that, today's the next day, I called her and I let her know that, I'm still having this allergic reaction. My back is itching a lot because they administer the test on your back. So I told her my back is itching a lot. I was having like watery eyes. I hadn't had watery eyes in months since the summer began. I was telling her I was coughing. I was telling her that my nose was running. And she's like, no, it's impossible. She was like, those symptoms are supposed to last only for a half hour. So maybe, I don't agree that this is what's causing it. I said, but after I had this test administered, I said, I have gone the entire summer practically without using allergy medication. So, she was like, well, I got the test from this place and, it's the most diluted. So I said, well, maybe I'm just really sensitive to this type of stuff. And so she says, okay, well, get some Benadryl. And I told her I can't get Benadryl. There are no open pharmacies where I live. I live in New York City, but I do not live in Manhattan. I live in the outer boroughs. So a lot of stuff that's accessible to residents of Manhattan are not accessible to people that live in the outer boroughs, especially after 9 o'clock. And so she's persistent. I get this Benadryl to get rid of these symptoms, which in a way I guess I appreciate because she's taking care of her patient, but I'm telling her it's not possible, and she just really didn't believe me. And so she's like, let me check online. Let me send a prescription out for you so you can go and pick it up. And I just said, whatever I have to do, I have to wait until tomorrow. So as I mentioned before, I don't know if that classifies as workplace racism, but we can take that example. Additionally, it kind of is reminiscent of what the previous caller had mentioned. I work in New York City child welfare, and we get, my job is to investigate reports of child abuse and maltreatment. And so we have clients that reside in all kinds of settings. I have a client, she's Latina of Puerto Rican descent, and she is currently residing in a domestic violence shelter. And so the case manager is this white woman. She's a fat white woman, so most people would refer to her as a snow beast. So this snow beast has a tendency of just always wanting to go. Like, as an investigator, my job is really to assess the home or assess the living environment that my clients live in, and also assess the children and assess the family dynamics. So one day I go to the shelter because it is because it's a domestic violence shelter, you have to be announced. So you have to announce your visit prior to going there. And so I told her that I needed to come at a specific time on a specific day. And when I got there, she's going upstairs with me. And I said, no, I need to speak to my client alone. And she got really upset because I told her that I wanted to speak to my client alone, because she had a tendency, if I spoke to my client, she would just answer questions for my client. And I'm like, wait a minute, I need for this woman to talk. That's what the investigation is about. I have to get it from the parent's mouth. I have to get the parent's account, not your account or what you think she should do. I'll speak to you later about what you assess the situation to be. Or if you have any extra input, I'll speak to you later about that, which I can do at any time. And so she got very upset with me. She went and she spoke to her supervisor, who happened to be a black woman. This black woman had explained to me, well, this is something that we often do. It's not something that's mandatory that the case managers be present when we speak to the residents. Another thing that I noticed that this white woman did was she would often watch what I was writing in my book. We have these books that we carry with us, and we document our conversations with our clients and our families. And so she was always watching what I was doing. And so this time when I got up to go assess the living environment, I went into a bedroom. She was just sitting there, but when she saw me get up to make motions to go to the bedroom, she followed me to the bedroom. I speak to the child, then she has to chime in and speak to the child. So, I mean, no white friends, no white colleagues. These are absolutely race soldiers that are really just trying to look and see and make sure that either we're doing what we're supposed to do, we're not outdoing them, or they're just looking for something that they can get us in trouble with, because she reported to my supervisor at the time when I told her I did not need her to escort me, and I told her supervisor, I do not need an escort at this time. I just need to see my client really quickly, assess really quickly, and leave. She reported this to my supervisor. Why was this a complaint? She just made it into a complaint because she felt like she needed to be present to see what I was doing, how I was addressing my client. And as she said to me, to advocate for our client, because she's my client just as much as she's this snow beast's client. But why do you have to advocate if you're not a lawyer? And it's not mandatory that you be present. So I wanted to share that. I have a couple of other things to share, but I'll give Mr. Thomas from New York an opportunity to speak, and everyone else. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thomas in New York, are you still with us, sir?
I am, but I'm on a train that's about to pull off, so I'll catch you once I get from New York to New Jersey. I'll pick up the call again.
Appreciate that. For the female caller who was just speaking with us, that great timing with the male caller who just talked about being interrogated, where he was not even aware that this was an interrogation to see if he had, committed some act of treason or espionage or something. That is pretty typical under the system of racism, white supremacy, where it's always you are about 5 seconds away from potentially being written up, indicted, charged, ticketed, who knows, for anything, and just being aware that particularly in workplace situations, and especially in any sort of situation where a white person feels like they've been aggrieved. This nigger had the audacity to try to tell me that I can't come in, and follow on the assessment that she needs to meet with her client in private. Just those little things. It's been my experience. Racists, they take those type of slights. Oh man, this could end up being a vendetta for the longest time. I gotta go and write up an accusation that you did this. I'm gonna watch you for the next 6 months to see if you mess up anything, if you drop a paperclip, or if I can accuse you of stealing rubber bands. Just seems to be pretty standard in terms of how they function. And I would say it seems that white women in particular, it's been my experience, are extremely vindictive in this regard. Again, trying to weave in some of the commentary as we go. Written commentary folks have written in over the past 2 weeks since we weren't here. Next person that wrote in. Okay, this is black male. My union representative approached me asking if I wanted any available jobs that were being canvassed for, meaning I can move around due to seniority. He then looked at my pendant that I have been wearing for 3 years as I said no to the jobs. He then asked it live, referring to the pendant on my chain. I said, what? Knowing what he said was speaking of, he responded, that is it live ammo? I told him bullets don't live and it's not real. He told me, be careful, others may get offended. Now this is the job where I told you all they wear are guns and Confederate flag t-shirts. Crazy white boy and all, I asked him who would be offended and why. He told me, the lefties. I asked, what do you mean? His reply was, the left, left wing. I told him I don't know what that is, and he just said, people who are anti-gun. This is something that holds my brother's ashes. The one I mentioned to Dr. Welsing on the cows in 2015, who was lynched in Lewisburg Federal Prison. I will not put it on to come to work, and it is a backstory as to why I think he approached me. I'll share more later. Wow. The tackiness. That's why, and I mean, even for something that's sacred, I mean, you have something literally on your person that has someone who has transitioned, a relative, a family member, someone who meant something to you, and then you have, some tacky, and with the backstory, the tacky type of racists coming in wearing their Confederate flag, paraphernalia, and all the rest of it, to come in and want to ask you some questions, and oh man, I don't know if that's acceptable. That looks like that might be offensive for you to have that sort of thing on at work. I'm just a huge advocate of, I don't have any sort of sentiment at my desk or on my person because I don't want to have any discussion with you about anything significant, sentimental, anything that means something to me. Let's just talk about our job and keep it at that. Like, I just wouldn't want to have too much or any in-depth conversation with a racist about my family, particularly someone that's transitioned or what have you. Just, man, let's just get back to the job and, do our work. But yeah, that is about the size of what you can expect from racists. Number again, 641-715-3640, code 564-943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Other folks that we have not heard from, if you have commentary, feel free. Or if you have suggestions for any of the comments you've heard from listeners as we have proceeded.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, everyone. Right now, getting into the beginning of football season. This past week, kind of like didn't mean to, but was involved in a meeting about fundraising. And I first didn't recognize this Spanish-speaking racist suspect, but once I did recognize him, I remembered last year that he had a very negative attitude because the players weren't raising enough money to his satisfaction, and I perceive that he is the owner of this fundraising business,
and his other Spanish-speaking white buddies who are a part of the administration of this high school hired him and rehired him again. So once the memory came of him of this meeting with the coaches, I just sat there and didn't say anything. If I had somewhere to go, I would have went. It was kind of like, it wasn't really formal or anything like that. It was casual, and I basically was just sitting there because I didn't have anything else to do, anywhere to go. But at the end of it, he came up to me to stick his hand out. Now, I shook his hand at the beginning of the meeting, and I didn't, as I recall, I didn't remember who he was exactly. Had I remembered it before he stuck his hand out the first time, I wouldn't have stuck my hand out and shook his hand. But at the second time, when he came around at the end of the meeting, I did remember who he was, and I asked him, I said, well, what am I shaking your hand for this time? And he was a little bit aghast by my question. Because as I mentioned before on the program, when a white person sticks their hand out to shake your hand, they basically are attempting to get your confirmation of their nasty or tacky or terroristic behavior. And by you shaking their hand, it acknowledges that it's okay with them. And I'm not really with that as far as they're concerned. So I basically told him that what I'm telling everybody right now about since he opened it up, that I don't like his attitude. And I can recall during the time when he was mentioning about the program this year and what needs to happen, he kept mentioning the phrase, holding them accountable. He must have said it about 10 times. But nevertheless, I didn't bother to ask too many questions because I didn't have to, and I didn't have to participate anyway. And so I just told him I don't want to ask no questions, and I don't want to talk about it at all. And no, I'm not going to participate with you in any type of fundraising. And he just left it at that. And I'm pretty sure he got the message on what I was saying. So that was my immediate experience of workplace racism this week. Thank you.
That gave me a whole new appreciation on the term accountable, which I think if anyone who has listened to this program knows, that is one of my favorite terms. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it's difficult to know the origins of these phrases, and when people started saying that, when it become a popular thing to start saying, yeah, we got to hold black people accountable, got to hold them like when we started saying that. But it seems racist man might be the origin of that too. Racist man and racist woman might be the origin of that phrase too. And the children, normally it'll be Barack Obama and Colin Powell and Clarence Thomas we got to hold accountable. Now it's the 10-year-old was on the football team or the high school football. We got to hold them accountable and get out here and fundraise. Get this one. That is absolutely amazing. That right there would tell me just the fact that this is someone classified as white. That's really all I need to know. But I mean, wow, you're coming in talking about we need to hold these young students accountable in their fundraising efforts. Yeah.
He had the nerve last year, because I started recalling a lot of things that he said and did, because he really got angry last year. And like I said, I don't have to really participate in it, so I'm like aloof to it. I really don't say anything. I just separate myself from it. But he had the nerve to identify one of the only white males on the team, and see how much money he raised. In other words, as opposed to these niggas ain't raising no money, on it, that sort of thing. And that was enough for me right there, as far as that's concerned. I can't tell, the administration at the school or anybody on what to do and what to say. And then the whole phrase of holding people to account. How can you do that? How are any non-white person is able to hold anybody accountable? First of all, I'm not sure on what that means in the first place. And that's just my observations from this week. That's it. Thank you.
Well, maybe he will explain what holding accountable means. That's something I encourage as well. But yeah, to be expected, and I think we've heard a few reports on dealing with this race soldier. This always great when you can try workplace codification in different environments, like when you can function in a work environment that's either this is a volunteer situation or this is a situation where, my children are not going to starve. If I decide that I need to quit this job in the next 5 minutes, that's not going to impact, anything financially. Like, no big deal. I don't have to cut back on anything. We can still go and waste all of our money buying, Empire DVDs and whatever else. Yeah, big fan of having totally different counter-racist code of war. It doesn't necessarily have to be different, but I guess you can be more aggressive in terms of what you're going to tolerate. Let's lower threshold, and maybe you can even ask more questions. As you can be a little bit more aggressive in an environment, maybe take a few more risks in that sort of setting, as opposed to an environment where you might be a bit more dependent on the income and stability of that employment. Do we have other people that we've not heard from? If you had comments you wanted to share based on what you've heard thus far, if you had your own situation you wanted to discuss, line should be open. Proceed.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. I had a few incidents that I would like to share. The first was, I guess you can call it like a small incident. It was in the break room, like one of the white lady that's the head of the HR, she walked into the break room, I guess to heat up something, in the microwave. And there was another white female in there, I guess, eating her lunch. I was out in the hallway talking on the phone. So I don't know what they was talking about, but the significance of why I shared this one to begin is that I went in, and apparently, like, I know pretty much anyone on the line that smelled what burned popcorn smells like. So that's what I detected, like the smell I sensed. So it was a pack of, or a roll of paper towels on the top of the microwave in the back, and it had the paper towel, I guess, like stretched down, or I guess like it was blocking it so that people wouldn't use it. So I said, wow. I said, who burned up something? I said, who burned up something? And the other white girl that was in the break room, she said to me, she says, I have sworn to secrecy, verbatim. And I thought about that because this same person, she's very emphatic about not burning popcorn and putting the signs up, from the years I've been there. So I'm thinking apparently since she kind of walked out, real fast out of the other door, so logically she burned the popcorn. But I know Mr. Fuller talks about the hypocrisy. Like I guess this wasn't her practicing racism per se, but that younger one, when she said she was sworn to secrecy, meaning she ain't want to share what the white woman did. She did it. She burned the popcorn, but she ain't want to say she did it because the woman told her not to tell nobody. And this same woman goes in there to make popcorn again. Today, walked right past me. but then really like look me directly in the eye. So yeah, I wanted to share that one about the popcorn, saying the other girl said she had sworn to secrecy. So yeah, she didn't want to break that code. Next incident was I was bringing the mail in from the post office to the clerk's office, and there were these fans, the old school ones that rotate when you press the button. There were like 3 fans on the cart. So I drop off the mail, and then I go across the hallway to do my usual rounds or whatever. And then when I come back around, one of the white bailiffs, he said, "Man, you let the clerk." He didn't say the clerk. He said the clerk's name. He said, "You let take the damn fans, like TAMN." So I said, "Wow, like why use that kind of language?" And he didn't answer. So I walked the reporter to the black female supervisor. So she was like, "Oh, would you like to go and report this to our supervisor?" So we went in to talk about it. Then we went to, ironically, the same HR woman that burned the popcorn. So this same lady, apparently, when we got to talking to her, she was the one that set the cart there, all right, with these fans in the lobby. And her and the clerk had planned to move the cart to take that to another building. But this white man, like, took it upon himself to basically tell me that that's reserved for you to do. Like, that's reserved for a nigger, basically. Like, that's what that was communicating. But anyways, I reported this to her, and I didn't use the term racism. I just used terms like incorrect or inappropriate language. And what I noticed about this time, and when I reported the guy who was harassing me on my way walking to the workplace, is that they tell me, don't take it too personal. And it sounded like it was a template phrase that she had practiced for when a black person or a non-white person is coming to make an allegation about racism, like don't take it too personally, because this person and other bailiffs have said things about, as you said before, like women or white women. And my supervisor and the black female and her, we were all in there together talking. So she was very crafty with her language. So, she had said she was sorry to me like 2 or 3 times, but I don't know what that meant about don't take it too personally. So, but when the guy cursed me out, she said that she would go talk to the sergeant and tell him, I guess, to keep their opinions to themselves. And I did say I was going to document that down, and I did end up doing that. So, I never really had a conversation with this person, but I think I did very well on expressing what had occurred and me being mistreated. But I think she did know that racism was at play, because it was them two, they set the carts out there, but he didn't tell them that, as a person. But she said that I shouldn't take it too personally. So, when that meeting was done, she just, said she was going to go and take care of it. And the black female said, "Well, I hope this doesn't, down your day or whatever." So I just said, "I'm just going back on to do my work or whatever." But yeah, I think she might be monitoring me a lot closely now. Said, "This is the most friendly guy here." So this was what the white woman said. So I just want to report those 2 incidents for now. And thanks for allowing me to speak.
Wow. when the white woman, when you went to report all of this, when she said this is the most friendly guy here, was she talking about you or the suspected racist?
She was talking about me.
Oh, okay. Great, 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 great. That's one reason right there. I think is great if you can just get a rep. You speak to everybody on the job. You don't want to be aloof. You speak to everybody. Morning, Helen. Morning, Tom, and the whole nine. But hey, you're not talking about foolishness. You're not gossiping. That works for you. Anything comes up, they can reflect like he speaks every day. He's on time. He's not talking a whole lot of foolishness. Hey, right on. What's the issue here? What's the problem? And the other portion you said now when the guy about these fans, I guess number one, while I was hearing all of this, I was snickering. I think the high for today in Seattle was 68 degrees. Anyway, so the movement of these fans down in Florida that causes this whole kerfuffle, was he upset that the fans were being moved, or was he upset that these females, white women, I guess, that they were moving the fans and that you should have been the one moving the fans?
Yes, sir. See, like the context is like this the same woman. She had apparently, and now this is interesting. Now this person who I reported it to, this was the same one that put the fans in the cart and sat them out in the lobby. Like I guess I can use the term ironically. So this definitely was a point of me being truthful to her, so she can't say I was making it up. So she's like, "Oh yeah, I sat those out there." So she was basically saying, "Oh well, I just don't know why he would, butt in, and this was none of his business." So she was saying that she put it there. She put the cart. She stuck the fans in the cart and pushed them out to the lobby. And the clerk, I guess the most, I guess, highest ranking person there, he personally wanted to take the fans to another building. Like he didn't want nobody else to do it. Apparently she told me that's what the clerk wanted to do. So that was something decided upon between the two of them. So he didn't apparently use this toxic language to them. He waited until he seen me to say that with that curse word in it. So yeah, basically to answer your question, yes, he was upset, and he said that nasty language because he felt as though I should be the one moving it wherever it was moved to, and not the white people.
Do you have a guess as to the age of this suspected race soldier?
Well, I would say he looks like he is maybe about over 50, I guess. Like blonde hair guy.
Okay. That for anybody that we talked about, Florida is infamous. If you're a Florida resident, you should own Dr. Marvin Dunn's the history. Oh, I got my library rack. It's probably close enough that I can put my hand on it. Dr. Marvin Dunn's book on the history of anti-black violence in Florida. I'll be able to put my hand on it in the next second or two, but you should own that book. But when you think of Florida, like, oh man, like it is so much beyond Trayvon Martin. They are infamous for killing and brutalizing black people, the Dozier School. I mean, it's just tons. Jackie Robinson almost died in Florida. They have killed tons. Killed, tortured, maimed tons of black people. That's the Sunshine State. But to be in Florida, to have this white dude that's, in his 50s, I mean, wow. Like, matter of fact, I think when I don't want to put it out there because I might be wrong. I have to go back and verify the state where it happened at, but I'll share on the compensatory calling. Anyway, for this guy to be in his 50s or older, he has probably seen a lot of flagrant terrorism in the great state of Jacksonville, named after Andrew Jackson. He's probably seen all kinds of racist acts. So just your presence, he is probably calling you all kinds of niggers every day. And he's probably saying it just that way, nigger every day when he sees you. But just everything about that, those type of incidents, I bring this up all the time. Do you think there's any way in the world you could have walked in the popcorn situation and been like, what the hell, Helen? You effed up the microwave, burning the popcorn? And, we're just going to go on about our day. Like, I mean, just there's no way white people can, on the job, they are able to do things flagrantly all the time that it would be absurd. And they're not only able to do these things, they're able to pick out, I can do this specifically to the niggers. I know I couldn't go in there and say, why didn't you make that nigger move the damn fans? Or even if you drop the nigger ball, why didn't you make him move the damn fans? Why are you moving the fans? That's what we got him for. You know, I can't go in here and talk to another white person like this. I'll just wait till I can get this nigger over off in the corner and make sure, this is still Florida. I remember what we used to do to folks like you. That used to be the best you could hope for, is moving fans. Got to sit here and look at you. I mean, really, that's just, in my view, that these are the folks that we're working with. This is the mentality. This is the mindset that we have on the job at all times. And to not be surprised about it, I think that's one of the things I encourage as well. When these sort of things happen, to not fly off the handle. You cannot get upset. I'm so glad I did not hear. I cursed. I told that cracker, who do you think you're? Like, that's not going to work. 9 times out of 10, in my experience, when you go to HR in that circumstance, you are the one that ends up getting in trouble. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you did that. And that is not the way that you want to handle those situations. And the way I think that you avoid that is by not being surprised. I wouldn't care if he was 20 or 15, but certainly him being 50 or above, he could be older. Not being surprised, even if he had called you a nigger, not being surprised. Like, that's just all of us. We really got to make sure that we have that in mind. I think I could be in error, but at least in my experience, I think that gives you the best opportunity to give a very constructive response that's going to work in your favor. And it seems like that's what happened here. It seemed like nothing, didn't seem like you were harmed, didn't say any, where they did anything punitive to you, and, said, I guess they'll watch, or what. I guess you can update us on, what transpires, how things proceed from here. But I think when you don't get upset, whoa, why are you speaking that way? I'm going to go inquire and see if this is the way that we should conduct ourselves in the workplace here. And just handle it in that way. I think that works better than getting upset, name calling them back, cursing, that sort of thing, or even just being mad about it for the day. Just, oh, okay, this is practicing race soldier. That's already what I knew. I'm very well versed in my Florida history. Yeah. Any suggestions for a situation our caller dealt with? Anyone who thinks they better way you could have handled it? Or any questions about how all that went down? Anything you would have done differently and how you handled that situation?
Well, when I think back on it, I necessarily can't really think of too much. Maybe I don't know if I was thinking about maybe asking what did it mean that I guess taking it personally. Like, I don't know what that meant when she said that. Like, I guess from her point of view, but if I could add on one last thing, there has been this language of this word that this person has been sending out in emails about panhandling, and I know this fits perfectly about the issue with women, or that's code for white women. I think a lot of white women have been getting approached about panhandling, and in the emails, the term aggressive has been applied to it, so they've been saying aggressive panhandling. So I don't know. I think that could be, I would like to get your view on that, like, because I thought that could mean like a code for black panhandlers. Like, do you get what I'm saying on that?
Absolutely. I think you had said before that was when they were moved to action, right? When it wasn't when you were being harassed and threatened by panhandlers. It was when a white woman was harassed. So absolutely, it could be, because I've never, where I had to think of, it doesn't stand out as familiar to me. That it doesn't sound like a phrasing that I have heard regular, like I don't even know what that means. Like aggressive panhandling. I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't even know what classifies or what counts as aggressive panhandling. So, yeah, just the curiousness of the phrasing could be some racial coding.
Exactly. And then and another thing is how this is a new person that started, like the younger white woman, and she said she wouldn't tell who burned the popcorn. Like, and I thought they both under the same classification, and this person is saying that, oh, I'm glad they didn't allow Richard Spencer to come speak, this same person, but yeah, she practicing the same act of racism because, she sees that I'm not white, like, I'm a black person, and she didn't disclose who burned the popcorn, even though I seen her walk out the door. So, like, that was, like, I think you would use that term, dedication. So, like, I was thinking about that. It can just be small, like, incidents like that can be an act of racism.
Absolutely. And Pam has that whole section in her book, The Interracial Con Game, where she talks about how white people do not snitch. That's just an ingrained part of the white code by the time they're, definitely by the time that they're 15 and probably before, they got that. They are not going to rat out another, even on pop, you can put it in perspective. Popcorn or anything else, they are not going to rat out other white people on racial matter, and particularly to another nigger. Like, you gotta be joking. Like, whatever, man. Like, you will never find out who burned the popcorn up. Moving on to the next mystery. Did folks, any questions? Listeners, folks satisfied with this one? Great illustration. The importance, in my view, of making sure that you keep your composure. Don't lose your cool. Don't get upset. And don't be surprised. Repeat that all the time, man. Do not be surprised. Any type of comment that they make, if they call you anything, nigger, racist joke, curse at you, anything like that, do not. You should be saying, I thought this would happen. This is why I listen to the cows. This is why I study racism, white supremacy. I thought he would do this. These are not my friends. These are racists. I understand that. You're just being a little racist. Okay. And then you go about your counter-racist code for how you deal with someone practicing racism in your presence. And with that sort of thing, you can make sure you write that down and boop, boop, you can put yourself in a really strong position. No commentary on this? Folks satisfied? Right on. Other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, if you have commentary on any of the feedback we've heard from listeners thus far. If you have your own comments, feel free. Line should be open.
I'm sorry, may I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Just
Red
a
in
commentary.
Ohio.
Yes. Thank you. I did want to comment that I think the last caller, he definitely handled it well. I know that, with racist cursing at you, it does kind of it escalates very quickly. So I'm definitely glad that, the male didn't, fly off the handle, I guess. But I think that he handled it very well. That's all I wanted to add.
Indeed. I'll be anxious to get the update if anything happens about this. Other folks.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. Greetings. Roz, good to hear from you.
Greetings to you, Gus, and to the other callers and listeners. First, I wanted to ask, how is your back doing?
Not 100%, but I am better than I've been in about 2 weeks. We are well on the road to recuperating. I'm feeling way, way better than I have in a while. Thank you for asking.
Wonderful. I was going to ask if you got my email about trying turmeric.
I didn't. I was feeling so bad. I did not check my email. It was difficult for me to even set up looking at the computer. So yeah, I'm super behind on all email.
No problem. I was just going to say, because I had problems with my back too, and I knew a couple other people when I was working that had issues with different joints, and a lot of times the pain is, especially with back issues, comes from inflammation, and turmeric is one of the best things you can take for inflammation. And when I've used it and it helped me, and when I've offered it to other people, it's helped them too. So usually you can find turmeric at Rite Aid. They have like 500 milligram tablets, but you can get them as high as 1,500, and it will really, really help to alleviate the inflammation, which should help also reduce the pain and discomfort that you're feeling. So hopefully you're able to get your hands on it, and that it'll be able to help you. But I just wanted to let you know about that too. Also, I would agree with Red, and peace to you as well, that the previous caller did handle the situation well. So I definitely have to say I agree with that without question. And I had a couple of incidences myself. The first one actually had to do with my son. He went out with his best friend maybe about a week ago. They had gone out, they spent some time together, and he now lives in New York City. And they had gone to a restaurant in the city. And, oh, excuse me, I don't believe this thing went off on me. Give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So when he went to the restaurant, they went to this Ukrainian restaurant, and because he came home from the situation and asked me, he's like, well, do you know much about Ukrainian people and racism? So I said, I've worked with them before, Polish and Ukrainian people, and I said, the ones that I've worked with have never exhibited racism towards me, but I said they can be extremely racist. I said, you're talking about, that whole Russia, Poland area, and they have their own feelings about black people. So he had told me when they went to the restaurant, it was him, his best friend, and his best friend's Asian girlfriend. So they go into the restaurant, they're sitting there, and after about 15 minutes, he says to his best friend, hey, nobody's even coming to our table. They're not even giving us water. Like, what is this? And his best friend responds in kind, like, yeah, that's really strange. So then he actually does a quick, after not really paying attention when he walked into the restaurant, he does an assessment and realizes that they are the only black people, only non-white people in the establishment. So immediately he gets agitated. He says, I'm not sitting here for this. He said, I'm not staying. I don't want anything people have to offer, and I'm not patronizing this business. Let's go. So as he goes out, he just basically told me, he just made a comment that the waiters and waitresses could hear on his way out that he wasn't dealing with an establishment that was going to practice racism, and they left and ended up going somewhere else. And I told him, I said, it's really interesting because a lot of people think New York City is this metropolis and this quote-unquote melting pot. I said, race is oil and water. And I said, New York City is no different than Alabama or any place else in this country. And I said to him, I said, I'm of the Malcolm X adage, anywhere south of the Canadian border is down south. And that's what you experience there. Because he had never experienced something like that before himself, and especially not in New York City. That was a first for him. So I just had to kind of explain that to him. He said, okay, no problem. So that's the first incident. The second incident has to do with my father-in-law's estate. I'm the executor of his estate, and we've been dealing with the pension board because he's a former correction officer, that his pension actually rolls over to his wife. So we've been trying to facilitate this ever since he passed away at the end of June. And we need to get like the death certificate, copies of his marriage certificate, all of the stuff that they're requesting. So each time we've gone, they've added on more stuff. So I told my wife, I said, basically, they're trying to make it as hard as possible for us to facilitate getting this situation as far as the money and everything that she's supposed to be getting this transition to her. And I said, they're going to make this hard because we're black. And I said, also, he was a man who made a lot of good financial decisions. So when he passed away, he's okay. He was doing all right. He wasn't rich or anything, but he was doing okay. So I ended up having to go to Vital Statistics. Actually, I went with my wife originally to get his marriage certificate for his wife, which is one of the things that they requested to process everything. So when we go, there's this blonde-haired, blue-eyed beast, snow beast, as the previous caller said. I think that's awesome. And she's there, and she's basically giving my wife a hard time over there. So I didn't fully understand what was happening in the moment, but I was there just to facilitate helping her. So I asked a couple of questions. The lady answered my questions, but then actually did not get the marriage certificate. So we had to tell her the date. She found the information, but she said there was a discrepancy with the information that was on it and that it needed to be changed before she could give it to us. So I said, okay. So we ended up, somebody else had suggested, I forget who it is, but somebody else suggested to my wife, instead of dealing with the county, to deal with the state. So we ended up going to the state. She ended up talking to a very, very helpful black female who ended up telling her, yeah, we've dealt with this lady Sue. She's racist. She always puts black people through a lot of crap that's unnecessary. And she said, well, actually, I wish you came to us first. We would have just gave you the marriage certificate and not put you through all of that. So my wife said, okay. So then we went back to, because they said that they really didn't need to change anything. They said because the time that the marriage certificates were done, that if the wife was previously married, they would always sign the new marriage certificate with their maiden name hyphen their married name, which is how she signed it. But the pension board wanted it where she basically just had her maiden name without the married name, and that was the change that they needed. So the black female said that's not necessary. So I went back and I actually told my wife, so let me deal with her. So I called and I asked her, I said, well, who needs this change to be made before you can give us a copy of the marriage certificate? And she kept beating around the bush, wouldn't answer my question like white people are notorious for doing. So I asked her about 6 times straight, just for a straight answer. I said, is this something that the state requires, or is this something that Sue requires? That was my question. She wouldn't answer me. So then I just started raising my tone and becoming much more assertive. And I said, listen, I didn't ask you any of the questions that asked you a question about any of the things that you said. I said, I'm asking you for a simple answer. Answer me this. Is the request for the name to be changed before you print and give me what I need? I said, my father-in-law worked for the great state of New Jersey for numerous years as a correction officer. I said his record was impeccable. And I said, now that he's passed away, you're trying to put me through all this nonsense. I said he's an ex-veteran. He's also an ex-special police officer and an ex-correction officer with an impeccable record. I said, I don't believe that you're going to sit here and put me through this nonsense for some crap that you're personally requesting that the state does not demand. I said, answer my darn question. I said, is this a request that's being made by the state of New Jersey, or is it being made by Sue? She finally said, it's something that I'm requesting. I said, listen, I'm not even going to waste my time with you. I said, thank you for answering my question. I said, you've done all that you're going to do to aggravate me and my family. And I hung up on her. Then I went the next day to the state and facilitated it as the executor, which was something I didn't know I could do originally that I found out later on. So again, anything these people can do to stop black people from getting the simplest things accomplished, they will do. They are psychotic. They practice warfare. That is all they know how to do. Anything they can do to make difficult the lives of black people on any level. I mean, even just with the simplest thing, just to give you a pen, they'll make that, HE double hockey sticks too. And everything that you said from the time I listened to this program, which I'm so thankful because it changed my life, is accurate. These people are psychotic, and everything they do is about practicing warfare. And the warfare is practiced in ways that is so clandestine sometimes, and the effects that it has on us is so, sometimes it's hard for us to even read that we're being affected on the levels that we're being affected. And one thing I can say is, even though I've been getting a different type of stress as dealing with the executorship and trying to find work and all of this stuff, I must say it has been great to not have to go into a plantation and deal with the executorship stuff on top of that. Because, I mean, I literally would be getting it from every angle possible. So, honestly, the fact that I was laid off right before he passed away, which is so ironic, was just the perfect scenario because I couldn't see myself having to go to a plantation and then also having to deal with the state and these random white people who make things hard just because they see that a black person did something right with their lives, financially speaking, and they're not in a position where they're struggling or they're starving or they need anything from the government. And then now that he's passed away, you're going to make it torture to get his wife the things that she deserves as his spouse. It's nonsense. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, and absolutely be very wary. They're watching us all the time. They're psychoanalyzing us all the time. Everything you do say, every gesture you make is being watched, analyzed, recorded by them, whether it's mentally, audio, video, and what they do is they study these things to learn how to better terrorize us. Thank you so much, and I'll mute my line, and hopefully you feel better, okay?
Going to look for turmeric tomorrow.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna see if I can get some for you and have it sent over. Did you ever send me your new mailing address? I want to make sure that I update it on my Amazon, and what I'll do is actually I'll just buy it and I'll have it sent to you.
Wow. Much obliged. I will tell. I think I did, but I'll double check on the mailing address. But yeah, much obliged. That's outstanding.
No problem. I'll do it. Yeah, as soon as I get it, I'll do that ASAP for you. Okay. And I just hope you take good care of yourself and just continue to get better. And something else that's also good for inflammation is colloidal silver. I don't know if you've ever taken that before, but it's something you can take to prevent illness. It's such an incredible thing that cures all kinds of stuff. It helps bones heal. It helps cellular regeneration, which is something I experienced with my father-in-law when I was caring for him. And it kills everything as far as germs, preventing illness, sickness, cold, flu, and different types of cancer, viruses, fungus. It kills all of that stuff without affecting the organism in a negative way. And it's something that can also help with the inflammation. So I wanted to toss that out there to you as well, okay?
Spectacular. I appreciate the info.
No problem. Peace and much love to you and to all the callers and listeners. I'll mute my line, okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Man, that was
Thank
really
you,
important.
Thank you.
That was really important what Raj said about asking questions as well, and having to deal with all the stress of losing a family member, and then having unnecessary racist obstacles just in dealing with that whole process. Just the treachery in terms of how race soldiers function with regards to black people. But asking questions, and then make sure they answer your question. That will tend to shed light on exactly the nature of what is happening. Great job. Ask questions. And I think even the caller said that before. Get in the habit of thinking of the questions that you need to ask so you can be efficient. Sometimes 5 questions will suffice. That way you don't have to waste time and ask 15 when you can just ask 5 and take care of the problem. Do we have other folks who had commentary, workplace racism?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Gus. Hey, Dwight. From Railroad, Alabama, man. The white fraternity. It's been a while since I've been able to call in. I've listened a lot. Got a coworker, man. He's a younger guy. They don't hire many black guys on this railroad, so any of the black guys that I can get and can talk to and enlighten them about what's going on and, you know, how to operate and function in this system, I try and help them. But this cat came to me the other day and he was like, hey, man, I got a disqualification letter in the mail. And the supervisor never even told me about this letter. And I was like, oh, okay, so how long you been running the machine? He said, I just got to this team on, this is August the 24th. So I just got to the team like July the 17th. And I've been on the machine 4 days. And I said, so he disqualified you after 4 days. And the policy says, and that comes from you enlightening me about going to the policy. The policy says you have 30 days to qualify on this particular machine. So I said, well, you hadn't been on it 30 days. He said, yeah, I know it. And he said, but he disqualified me. And I said, well, what we'll do is, you know, Railroad has a union representative that you should call and arbitrate, you know, any letters like that. So I called my union rep because he was, you know, too young to know that he should call. And I called my union rep and I asked him, I said, hey, you know, what's going on? This guy's been disqualified from a machine that he hadn't even had the proper time to even train on it. And the union rep, which is, you know, a black guy that I rely on, he said, well, has he been trained on the machine? And I thought about, you know, the workplace racism that we've been going through, and that really, really, really helped. And I said, no, this guy's just got here. He hadn't been trained. He said, well, he shouldn't be, you know, disqualified from a machine that he doesn't know how to run. And so at the same time, he hadn't had 30 days to qualify on the machine. He said, what I'll do is I'll contact the representative that represents him and union representative that represents him, and I'll let him handle the case because he's not in my district. Well, long story short, the next day, the supervisor comes to the black guy and he says, hey, look, I'll rescind that letter. But the black guy was really concerned about not having the target over his back. And I was telling him, hey, look, brother, you know, certain things you got to stand up for. And if you've not been qualified or you've not been trained on this machine, then you deserve the right to stand up for yourself and not just take a disqualification letter because the disqualification lasts for a year. And so that was one success story that we got overturned because we called the union and we went through the proper procedures and protocols to get the issue resolved. So, and I want to thank the cows. I want to thank the callers and listeners, and most importantly, Gus. Now, I got one more issue that I had. Like I say, Gus, I'm on the railroad, and this is a very, very racist thing. I'm in America, and I'm in Alabama. But okay, the next one was I had a coworker, and he was white guy, and he was talking to me about ethnicity, and so once he started talking about it, I don't initiate these conversations, but I do ask questions like we all should. So I started asking him. I said, "Well, so what's your ethnicity?" He said, "Well, my mom was German, my dad was Italian." And so I started to say, well, wow, man. And he got to telling me that, and I got to talking to him about racism, and he telling me that the Irish were treated worse than blacks, or just as bad as blacks, and the racism is just a big issue to pit one race against another. And so, so I started to ask him. I said, well, what do you think? Tex there, the other guy there, what do you think he is? And without a fail, he could recognize the ethnicity of each one of these white guys. And it brought a question to my mind. I want to ask you, it's amazing how white people can look at other white people and know exactly what they are. They can look at a white person and say, okay, he's a Jew, or he's an Italian, or he's Irish, or, he's German. And me, I'm looking at them and I'm saying, oh, well, that's another white guy. And so I listened to them and they talked, and they was talking about Jared Kushner, and that's President Trump's son-in-law, and how he's Jewish and how he's ruining everything. And it was just amazing to me that how white people can, distinguish between that, and us as black people, we don't have that luxury. We just have to view all of them as what they are. But, like you say, white can be exchanged anytime. But that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I got tons more, Gus, and I don't want to take up much time. Happy to be on the call, man, and I appreciate you, everything you're doing. I hope you get the feeling better. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That it's been my experience to the second incident that you mentioned. It's been my experience that because white people are not ignorant about racism, they are hyper conscious of color. They are constantly evaluating, paying attention to phenotypical characteristics, commenting on them. I think you see some of that same thing expressed. I know Dr. Wellesley, she used to talk about it all the time. When John Boehner, former House Speaker, when they would make all those comments about his skin complexion and how dark he was. Bill Maher used to do that all the time. He had about at least 10, 15 jokes about John Boehner's skin complexion. They are hypersensitive to that, in my view, and I think Dr. Wellesley would agree, all related to the crucial importance of racism, white supremacy. But that's just my view on why they are so discerning, so much more so than non-white people. That's been my observation as well. The first incident that you shared, always great to hear people using counter racism to neutralize racist attacks on the job. That's what this whole program is designed for. And I think you said it was a younger black person who got this disqualification notice after like 4 days or whatever it was. And again, I say it all the time.
Yeah.
For this program, I think it's so important because I think there are tons of younger black people who nobody has talked to them about racism. Nobody has talked to them about the workplace. Certainly nobody has put those two together and talked about what to expect, what to do. You can be totally blindsided. And I mean blindsided where as soon as you come out the door, you're having experiences like this, where your work career gets off to a terrible start. And then it can be super difficult because we're like, oh man, you can't even keep a job. You went there and got disqualified and didn't advance and all this. And I don't even know if we want to mess around to give you that happens to tons of black people. And it's not that we are incompetent or lazy. It's you got racists on the job who just said, oh no, we're going to see to it that you get fired or that you do miserable on this job. I'm not even going to train you. I'm not even going to give you half of the time to train and figure out what to do. Oh, you got 3 to another dumbass nigga, or get rid of him. That's what racism, white supremacy is. That the fact that you said that this victim, I guess, was so traumatized or whatever that he was just going to accept this. Like, hey, I don't want to cause any trouble.
He was scared to get target on his back, quote unquote, that target on the back. That's what he was so scared of, being singled out and the supervisor just picking on him at any chance. And what I got most importantly from this show was that D word. And that D word was discretionary. And that is treacherous. That word there will do you in anytime. And he was nervous of it. And I'm happy that I had this show. I'm happy that I was able to know that I could speak to this brother and be like, hey man, don't worry about that. You're in the right. And you got to stand up at some point. You got to stand up. And we all got families and we all got a job that we got to do. And the thing is with this railroad job is once you get in, it's like, okay, you're in here now. And anything that you do can get you out of here. And so, you build your whole livelihood up on this. So you on pins and needles, not trying to lose this quote unquote good job. And so you take a lot of stuff that you shouldn't, and it's unfair, but it happens. And I'm just thankful that I got this show to rely on, to know, to be in a position of knowing what's going on and kind of navigate accordingly and help out every black person that I can.
A plus, black.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir, Ross.
Hey, greetings again. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I wanted to speak to that too. The first incident, I agree with everything that you said, and to me, it kind of just is an example of something I said before when I was saying I said that I believe that because we've been under this racist oppression for so many years without any sort of mental health redress or spiritual health redress, that I feel that black people are being epigenetically changed to automatically accept racism. And to me, that's a great example of it. It's no different, and I've talked about this before, that, elephants are being born without tusks, which is their answer to white supremacy in the form of poaching. If they don't have tusks, they're not getting killed. And with us, if you just go along with whatever these people say, they're white, right, they can destroy you, it's okay. And that is why I think when Dr. Welsing, Dr. Kamal Kamban, and many others talk about black self-respect being the answer, because once they destroy that, then it's just everything else kind of falls in line in regards to the way that we're conditioned to think about them and to think about ourselves and our place in the system. And like the previous caller said, there are times when you just have to assert yourself. It's just a necessity. But because we've been beaten down, and especially black males, we've been emasculated and infantilized to the point where a lot of us are just terrified. Some of us can't even look white people in the eye because we're just that scared. And that is the epigenetic change that I'm speaking of. It's almost like we're predisposed to be docile and predisposed to just allow them to do whatever they want to do, and we don't have a response because, like the previous caller said, he didn't want a target on his back, and he was just under that automatic assumption, and he was so crippled by his terror, by his fear, that he wasn't even able to. And thankfully, the caller was there to actually give him that boost that he needed to facilitate what the young man could not do for himself. So I'm really happy to hear that he did that. Big up to you for black self-respect. Keep doing that. And if you can, try to pass on as much of that information to people who are worthy of it. You got to vet people, because some of us
Yes,
are so
sir.
damaged that we can be deadly to one another. But if a person is really seeking to improve their understanding of the system, if they're really seeking to try and make moves towards countering the system, that these are the types of things we have to do. That is something that I've done, and I really want to praise you for that. And I wanted to get a brief synopsis of the second incident because I wanted to speak to that too. It slipped my mind. Sorry, I'm a victim, so I just wanted to know if you could just give me a brief synopsis of the second incident because I did want to comment on that too.
Yeah, no, the second incident was, him. I can't. What was it? What was the saying?
Do you remember, guys, or at all?
Let's see. The first incident was the young guy got the jobs, or he didn't get the training or what have you. The second situation. The second situation. Oh, and I just said something. That was the one I commented.
Yeah, you spoke on that one first.
Yeah, you did, and that threw me off because he made such good comments on the first one.
Yes,
it kind of threw me off the. The second one. What was the second one?
Someone will remember. Someone will remember.
It was about ethnicity.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Ethnicity.
Ethnicity. That's right.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Everybody knew. Everybody knew what Jewish was and what Irish was, and nobody. And me. And I took it as like, wow, these white people know what each other are. And when I view them, I just view them as a white person. I can't even distinguish the difference between a Jew or a Irish or a German. And they were able to specifically say, like, look at him. And it wasn't just him saying it. I would go and I would be like, hey, so what do you think he is? And he would say, well, he's German. And so I would go to the white guy and I'd be like, hey, man, so what heritage or what's your ethnicity? My mom's German, my dad's. I was like, wow, how did he know that? You know, because I don't think we have that between black people. I don't think we can look at other black people and say, well, he's from, South Africa, and he's from, we don't. We're not able to do that. It's just amazing to me that they are able to do that.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is what I noticed with white folks beyond just the color, the intense attention they pay to color, they also pay attention to names, and that's usually how they discern. If you cannot see straight up, they discern by the name, because Italian names tend to end in vowels. Jewish names tend to be like Goldman or Kushner. I used to actually work for them, so I know
Kushner,
that.
Jared Kushner.
So a lot of times for them, it's usually by the name. Sometimes you'll find Irish people tend to have red hair. So usually, like, they'll call them gingers and little things like that. So there's nuances to that. Otherwise, they won't always necessarily know. Whereas with Asians, like, they tend to know. And I think with black people, it's our experience under white supremacy. We've been so mixed and matched and jumbled up amongst one another that we're not able to easily discern ethnic groups. Whereas on the African continent, a lot of it, they can look at each other on sight, not know a name, and know exactly where the person's from. In Asia, they do that, but because of the experience of Western Hemispheric blacks specifically, it is something that's difficult to do. So yeah, definitely, I find that to be a very fascinating thing as well. A lot of times Italians tend to have color because black people, Hannibal ran over in Rome for many years, so they're quite mixed there. So there's little nuances to how they do it, but I totally understand what you're saying. And again, like Gus says, their entire focus tends to be on racism and how to better practice it. And the best way to do it is to know who's who. Once you know who's who, then you make a snap decision, and then you start treating people the way that the system dictates they are to be treated. And again, thank you so much for your call. I learned quite a bit from you, and please keep doing what you're doing. Big up to you for Black Self-Respect, and great work. I'll mute my line. Thank you so much.
Thank you. One more, Gus. Like I say, railroaders, man, I'm a railroader, east corner of Alabama. Hey, look, so the last one, and it may be me, and I may be picking up on this, and I may be a little, apprehensive, but I noticed that I'm like the foreman of the gang, and I usually, a lot of times, I have like a group of white guys that's working for me, and And when it's time to take a break, we all sit everything off to the side, and we're on the railroad track. And a lot of times, these railroad tracks run in rural areas, in the woods, no way out. So it's hot. And it's tough work. So, and I'm aware of racism, white supremacy. So I don't really try and slack up on them. I kind of view my role as the white overseer on these white guys. So I kind of drive them. I push them until, if they need a break, I know the rules. So I'm going to, let them take a break. But when they take a break, I got 7, 8 white guys, and they started to talk about guns. And they talk about the AR-15 and the Ruger, and every one of them talk about deer hunting. And they almost got to the point where I think that I'm wondering, are they talking about guns to try and intimidate me because I'm not involved in the conversation, or I don't know, but it just seems strange. And one of the white guys was like, hey, Dwight, do you want to come to my house and shoot guns with me? Man, I got all kind of guns. And me, I'm like, well, I don't know. I'll have to see about that. So the next week he comes and he said, well, I told my dad you're going to come to shoot guns with me in Louisville, Kentucky. And he said, yeah, tell him to come on and we'll bring out the good stuff. And I'm just thinking like, they have got to be crazy to think that I'm going to go to their house and shoot guns with them. I don't know, but I wanted to bring that up, Gus, and I'll mute my line. I'm through, man. Thanks.
Wow, that is super dangerous. I guess my thoughts on the gun talk, I absolutely agree with your speculation that it could be a way of intimidating you in code, especially if you're the quote-unquote supervisor and you're working them hard or what have you. I could totally see that being our coded way of talking like, this nigga, we'll show him, we would do also this gun and boom, 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 all kinds of holes that we could, shoot off in a black person. I totally think it could be that. And in fact, I think we've had other people who've talked about working with whites where that seemed to be the only thing that they talked about when they were not talking about job related subjects, different guns. And I even think having like firearm memorabilia, magazines and what have you in the workspace. I think other people have talked in about that as well. And I agree. I think from white people, and particularly if it's the context where it's white people having these sort of conversations around other black people where the black people are not involved, absolutely. I think that can be done to send a message of violence. Absolutely. Emmy, are you with us? Did you have commentary? I don't think we'd heard from you at all. Thought she was with us. Maybe she.
Hello?
Oh, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Greetings, everybody. There was a couple of things I wanted to talk about. I haven't had like any real serious issue. This isn't me. I'm the one out in the DMV area who was working as a concierge in the overnight residential building, dealing with the suspected racist terrorists there. But first, also, school false messages began, so I just began TAing, and that's kind of what I wanted to tell you all about today. So I got paired with the white woman who runs the TA program, teacher assistant program for math, and I really didn't want her. I didn't know that, like, I picked what fit with my schedule, but so be it. And today was our first day. And I don't know if she knew me by name. She interviewed me, but that was like 5 minutes. I don't know if she actually knew who I was, like if she just saw me. So she probably really didn't know who her TA was. And although I know that it is not the best thing, and I do beat myself up for it, I hate being late. I was late today. I do live an hour away. I cannot predict who got into some bumper accident 45 miles away from my house before I get to school, and now I have like 10 minutes worth of traffic of squeezing through because of lane. There's nothing I can do about that. I'm professional. I'm passionate about math. I love it, and I'm very confident in my abilities. So in my ability to help other people learn the math is what I'm saying. So I was a couple minutes late. Today is the first day of class. I was really upset about it, like internally, because I didn't want to be, But anyway, so I saved it, came in, jumped in, did what I needed to do. But watching her watch me let me know what I'm in for the next semester. She's not, like I said, who I wanted, because I did meet her and I didn't like her when I met her. But here we go. So her nonverbals, and I don't even think that it necessarily had much to do with, I'm sure me being late probably just reinforced whatever it was that she wanted to feel about me, and that's fine. So the things that I wanted to talk about is, number one, I'm not going to let this person screw up something I'm very excited about with whatever it is that she has going on inside of her, whatever thoughts she has about me. I'm very excited because the class has a lot of non-white people in it. It's always a toss, like you never know, but I'm actually grateful. Not everybody is Black, but the majority of the class is non-white, which is going to make my job a lot easier, and being very helpful. That way, because if the class was majority white people and I really want to focus on the non-white people, that would be evident to somebody who's overseeing me, and I'm selecting that word intentionally. So as I kind of like let it go and went through about my day and everything like that, these are the thoughts that I came to, that here I am. I live in a system of racism, white supremacy. I'm a non-white Black female. And now that I'm in STEM, there are not a lot of Black people. So you deal with all of that stuff. And then if you are a codified Black person, you stick out even more, because the Black people who are in that environment are generally not codified. Therefore, there's a lot of extra stuff that goes on that a codified individual would not do. But I pretty much arrived at my conclusion, which was, I'm going to rock this semester. I'm going to have a great time TAing this class, and I'm going to help as many non-white people fall in love with math the way I did. That's it. I'm going to do my best to be on time. Another thing, and I'm going to let people know, because I don't like to tell people that I live so far away, because I don't want anyone to know anything. I want them to just assume I live right there. I'm a regular person just doing regular things. You know what I mean? But no, you need to know, because if you're going to stare me down, you need to realize I'm driving an hour and a half every day, twice a day. So don't. And you don't know about my life, and you don't know what I have going on. So white people love to pull their card about all the stressors and stuff they have. I'm not about to involve nobody in my business, but I'm not about to suffer silently either. So I, like, towards the end of the class, I let her know, I was like, you may not know, but I live in such and such. And her eyes got all big, like, really? I'm like, yeah. And she was like, oh, well, if you want, you can take my cell phone number and text me if you're late. I didn't take her up on that right away, because to text her means that I'd be texting her from my phone. And I feel like I just told you what you need to know. I live an hour away. You know what I'm saying? So what I need to text you for, if I'm a couple minutes late, just assume something happened, that there's traffic, whatever, It's not an excuse, but it is what it is. I'm not somebody living on campus who's a block away who can just walk up here. So cut it. I'm not about to be terrorized for the next 3 months or 4 months or whatever, and you're not about to screw this up for me. So we're just going to have to work together well and focus on what it is that we both love, which is math. That's what we're doing here. So I just wanted to share that with you all as one thing. I consider it a racist joke. It wasn't about human beings at all, but my conclusions about how white people view non-white people is not as human beings. So if they can do things to animals and other beings, I think sometimes it might even be code for us, but I don't think that it means like those are things that are reserved for animals and not, you can't do those things to Black people. I think if they can do it to animals and like that they definitely, then they'll do better to animals than they would do to us, if you ask me. So something about armadillos. So I was in bio, and she's really tacky. I wasn't really going to comment on the conversation that preceded my speaking, But yes, the white people do definitely use names. And she had a name, and she was like, "Does anyone know where I'm from?" I already knew she was like Europe. I could tell she was European. Like her, I could tell that. I couldn't place her where, but she had that very European feel. I did live in Germany for 4 years, so they feel different to me. But anyway, and some white girl was like, "Oh, you're Polish," and they had that little conversation about her name. So yeah, the white people are definitely distinguishing each other using whatever tools or resources or observations that they have. But this tacky, like I even had to write it in my notes. I just wrote tacky, 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 talking about an armadillo. And in Texas, I guess there are a lot of armadillos. And there's a joke in Texas that armadillos make the best roadkill because, and I was just like, what? And she was like, take it with a grain of salt. And I was like, that's disgusting. Why are we like all the things that we can talk about and you want to hear and just, okay, let's go. So apparently, I guess if you hit them, if they get hit by a car, they turn on their back because of their shell, and then their feet and legs are up in the air. And when they die, that's kind of how they stay. So they say that you go and put a beer can in their hand. And then there was like some kind of tacky tagline. And I was just like, I had to just look at the ceiling because if she looked at me or in my eyes, I knew my face was not, we were not going to have a good semester. So, and I arrived at the same conclusion there. Look, white woman, I want the information. I'm paying you for the information. It is up to me to make sure that I provide myself with what I need to be able to get what I need from here without taking on all that extra stuff. And I'm not going into it, but, you know, this is the bio, so we're all up in the Darwinism and origin of species and all of that stuff. So for me, it's a very interesting conversation, just like when white people want to talk about psychology, because they skate around it. I don't think that it doesn't matter. They skate around a very obvious pink elephant in the room for me, which is them. And so for me, I feel the exact same thing with origin of species, Darwin, and all that kind of stuff. So the entire class was like that. And I'm just looking at this white woman like, yeah, you're very tacky, and who knows what lies beneath your white woman-ish stuff. But anyway, so those are just a couple of things. I have not returned back to my position, or the position that I worked for. I didn't really want to. I can at this point, but I'm not so sure that it's the best move for me, only because in the time that I had away, it was, I guess, maybe similar to Roz's situation. It was like I left, and then there was a death in my family, and then I had other things. And so all the weekends that I ended up not working, I would have had to take off anyway for various reasons. But I didn't have to request it. I didn't have to ask anybody. I just wasn't there. And changes have happened over there. That individual who was walking around with his gun and all that stuff, he got evicted. He did not get evicted because he was exhibiting violent behaviors, or he was aggressive or terrorizing people that work within the building or live within the building. He got evicted because he owed over $10,000 of back rent. But in the time that I've been away, which is about a month, I just feel a lot better. And so I don't want to go back. I'd much rather pick up another TA class and do that than go back to that. So I'm not so sure that that's where I'll go unless I really, really need to. But right now I'm trying to be financially savvy and just kind of finagle my way into like the next thing. But I think that is it. I might have had some other things, but I think that is it. So I thank you all for listening.
Indeed. I hope you have a fantastic semester, learn a lot, able to help a lot of black scholars do well and enjoy their mathematics for the semester. And I know they have, you can, if you don't want to divulge your cell phone, they have, you can do text messaging with your email. You can take her cell number, and they have a free website that you can go to, and it'll tell you who her cell provider is, and then it gives you a list of the email that you use for whichever cell provider she has in conjunction with her number, and you can text her from your email account, any email account, and she can reply back. You'll get them in your email, and you can do it that way, and then you wouldn't have to divulge your cell number. That might be one way to manage all that. But yeah, I think that's constructive to let her know that you have a commute. I think in any type of work situation, that's good to let folks know if you have a monstrous commute like that, because you just never know when you have so many miles to travel to get to work. Anything could happen at any moment in terms of an accident or anything to cause you to be a few minutes behind in getting there, so that people are not just thinking, oh, you're some slacker, lazy person who just can't get out of bed and get it moving in the morning. And they still, might have that sort of attitude. Just that, the rest of us got here. You should be here too. That's been my experience. Always appreciate folks being on the lookout for racist jokes, any sort of racist commentary in the workplace. I think given what you shared in terms of some of the subject matter that will be discussed, that'll be a great environment to just learn and pay attention how things are presented in the classroom setting. Did we have, since we're winding down, did we have other folks? Oh, we had Thomas in New York. Checking to see a couple other hands. Make sure we get everybody in the last 15 minutes. Thomas in New York, are you able to speak now?
Yes, I am, Gus. Thank you. I'm in New York. I'm in Jersey now, but I left from New York, so it's a unique area where you could catch two trains and leave one ghetto and end up in another one, in another state. So what the lady just said, I would love. I after learning so much stuff over the years, I wish I could go back to school and do it over again, so I could question some of these things. I would say, do not let these people tell you that black people came from monkeys or some apes. Because we don't have monkey blood and they do. And only a monkey can give monkey blood. So obviously it's something there. Also, what the guy said, I notice all the time, generally when white people first meet each other, the conversation of where they're from, where their family bloodline comes from, is generally one of the topics. So they study each other. But I question some of their point of origins, because, unless you could go back to that place and you have family there, I don't believe them. Y'all don't know where y'all came from. Y'all just know that y'all are white. That's the way I look at it. That's just me. Because I don't see how they would be able to pinpoint themselves down to countries that didn't exist when this country was formed. The guy who said that he was they wanted him to go shooting with them. And I would just say, be very cautious. I wouldn't do it. All of a sudden they'll turn into Dick Cheney and shoot you in the face, and, it was an accident. And, what can you say? They get away with shooting black people pretty regularly. And that would be one where they'll definitely get away with it because it was an accident. And the lady who worked for the New York Children's Services, ACS, I see them do the same thing working at the hospital and the occasions where children come into the emergency room and they've been battered or abused or neglected. And the ACS, with here it's DIFUS, the workers come. And it's always a black and a white worker. And they take turns talking to the kids separately, which I thought was very odd. But I'm not privy to the conversations they have to know the differences. I just thought it was very strange. Almost like, they need two people to confirm something. But I personally feel like when it comes down to adopting black kids, black people should be the only people allowed to adopt them. And when it comes to taking black kids away from people's family, it should only be black people allowed to take a black kid away from their parents. So white people don't understand some of the situations black people go through. That's just the way I look at it. I was calling to talk about my follow-up on my vacation situation, which I took last week. I called in last week, but the show didn't. The show wasn't, going on. But I was able to get my vacation. At first, it was difficult because in my mind it's like they're being unjust. So I wanted to go to the next level, which was to inform the white people of what was going on. But I was told by coworkers that it would be better if I just go through the procedures, and which is the union, and meet with the union rep and explain my situation, and then we met with the boss. So when I got into the meeting with the boss, a Puerto Rican lady who's, well, I don't have coverage, and I don't know, and here people have to come and they put their vacations in January for the rest of the year, and I don't know what assumption you're under, and this, that, and the other, and I let her do all her talking, her eye rolling and her head nodded, like she was putting someone in their place. And then I pulled out my handbook, and I said, I told you on July 13th I was taking my vacation August 14th. She said, yeah. I said, now, according to the handbook, it says I have to give 2 weeks prior notice before I take a vacation. I said, so are you telling me that this department has different rules than the rest of the hospital? Do we have to go and inform the people up top that we don't have the same rules? So she said, well, let me see what I could do for you. Let me work this out with you. Let me make some adjustments to the schedule, and I'm going to get back to you. So the next day I came in and the schedule was adjusted. I didn't think she wanted me to go up to the higher ups and let them know the unjust situation that we're under. But I took the time, because before I went in there, I made sure I read my handbook very well. And I've been doing some of the reading of the paperwork that's posted on the boards around the hospital. And I see that there's several, I think I named one, burnt out work syndrome, but also mental health things. So I threw in, just as a cherry on top, I went through detailed situations of things that I've seen since I worked here in the ER. Traumatic situations, children shot, people I've had to move that are dead, move their bed so I could get the blood up under them, a lot of things that aren't supposed to work the way they work. And her mouth dropped, and I told her, I've even been thinking about speaking to someone about all of these things I've seen, and just to add a cherry on top. And since then, I haven't been placed in the ER, so that's been a great thing. So I just wanted to say, going through the handbook, it did work. I'm glad I did check out that information about the vacation. Of course, she still had the ability to decline my vacation even after that, because it does have a stipulation in there where, the managers have discretion. However, being that I positioned it in a way where it's like, hey, pretty much like a subversion type situation. You're doing something that the rest of these people don't know about. We need to inform them that this is what's going on here, that kind of helped me, I think. Also, I didn't want to be too, because I was very angry. I didn't want to go in there too angry, because the union rep, who's a black lady, she's like on 1,000, and she curses and everything. So I didn't want to be, we had to go good cop, bad cop. I didn't want us to both be the bad cops, but that's all I had to say about that. Thank you, Gus.
Wow. Using the policy and procedure and then follow it up with a question. Do we have a different vacation policy in this wing of the hospital? That is outstanding. I said that consistently. Refer to your policy and procedure. Sometimes that alone will be enough to solve your problem. Just make sure you check it out. And as I said, you should probably check it out. In fact, I would recommend read it cover to cover before you take the job. And then you can just highlight or what have you, important sections. You can refer back to it, and it's just a refresher as opposed to this is the first time I'm looking at this. But can be outstanding for a black. And again,
well, you know what, Gus?
Go ahead.
You didn't get it at the orientation or anything. What happened was one night I spoke to the security guard, and he had the copy at the security desk. So he made a photocopy for me.
Nice.
So that's what I went in there with.
Nice. Now we've had that come up as well, where sometimes, in my view, that's one of the ways that they practice workplace racism, where they make it very difficult for black people to obtain the policy and procedure or the company manual or whatever they call it in your work environment, but they'll make it difficult for you to get it. So you cannot see what the actual rules are. When you just have to take their word for what policy and procedure is. But great job, man. We have another illustration, in my opinion, when you have a person, you said this quote unquote Puerto Rican individual getting an attitude and putting you in your place, and I'm not going to hear all this and blah, blah, blah. You don't need to get an attitude, and particularly if you got policy and procedure on your side. Hey, ma'am, sir, you can be the calmest person in the room, because all you're going to do is, well, on page 67, it's like you don't need to have attitude if all you got to do is read from the manual. You can be the calmest person in the room. The person...
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. Just give me 1 second because I want to make sure we didn't miss this caller. 7722. Did you have commentary you were going to share?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to make a couple of comments regarding, one, the caller in Ohio and the hiring of high school students. I've noticed, being a non-degreed individual, that the racist man, racist woman likes to surround themselves with people who are more educated. To me, it's very reminiscent of chattel slavery, where the black workers on the plantations were highly skilled workers, more so than the masters. And to the caller in DMV regarding the roadkill, I spent 25 years of my life in the area of the world known as Texas, and they have some affinity, I would call it necrophilia, with dead animals. In fact, I remember a T-shirt regarding the quote-unquote roadkill cafe. You kill them, we grill them. So they would make jokes about killing different animals on the streets. Interestingly enough, all of these animals were dark-skinned. And I just wanted to make another brief comment regarding I believe it was Ross, regarding the turmeric and the silver. I have tried both of those. I highly recommend those to victims. In a situation where health insurance is difficult to get, it's very important that we are able to take care of ourselves and, if necessary, heal ourselves, I believe. And the turmeric has assisted me greatly. I do not take pain medication. Some people would say for obvious reasons, but I refuse to take pain pills. And turmeric and ginger have helped me greatly whenever I've had abscess or issues with my teeth, without having to recur to the doctor. Like the female caller said, they're always attempting to try new things on us. So I just want to second ginger as well as ginger tea, just raw ginger and boiled in water, has assisted me greatly with very difficult pain, and has allowed me to continue working, for my household. And I'll listen to the rest of the callers. Thank you.
Wow, I just recommended ginger to someone this week, I think within the last 48 hours. How about that? I'm a big proponent of ginger, raw ginger. We have about 5 minutes. Roz, were you going to comment?
Absolutely. One more thing I wanted to tell both of you and everyone on the line about pain, because that is one of the biggest things that we as Black people deal with in the system. And a lot of times, because of the design of this system, a lot of us, or some of us, end up dealing with hardcore drugs because the so-called over-the-counter or whatever other nonsensical prescriptions, placebo prescriptions, these white beasts give us, we end up carrying pain all the time, and they don't give us enough of a medication. There is one specific natural herb called wild lettuce. You can get it on Amazon for very cheap. It is as potent as opium without any narcotic effect on pain. I meant to tell you that too. It's called wild lettuce. You can get it in tea form. You can get it in a pill form. If you just research wild lettuce, it grows in everybody's backyard. The average Black person does not know this plant exists, but it literally is like a plant you can go out in your yard and find right there. It's extremely bitter if you choose to take the plant from the earth and use it that way. It has like a milky substance to it when you split the stem. If you get the tea form, you can make it where it tastes palatable, but it has the impact of opium as far as stopping pain. and it is all natural. It is non-narcotic. You don't have to worry about anybody, taking a drug test and say, oh, you failed. You took wild lettuce. Doesn't work that way, but it has that kind of strength. So I do want to put that out there too. The previous caller reminded me of that. The other thing I wanted to say, I was extremely happy to hear that Thomas got the situation rectified, because we had been talking off air quite a bit, and I know that he had been dealing with a lot of mental stress behind the places and situations he was being put in incorrectly on that job. So I'm extremely happy to hear that he was able to get that rectified. Also, I think that the so-called Latino woman, even though like Thomas said, she had the discretion of telling him no. I believe that because she was in that situation, in that wing of the hospital, where she was the dominant force, and she knew if he went to anyone above her, she would lose that once the white people got involved. So the best thing to do was to accommodate Thomas, because he had that handbook, and she didn't want to push things any further to make her personal situation get worse when the true masters come in and take care of the pseudo white supremacists, which is the role she was playing in that particular situation. So I'm extremely happy, and also I wanted to speak to what the comment he made about the black female who works for BCW. I think they still call it that. It's the Bureau of Child Welfare. I don't know if they changed the name in New York City, but when she was talking about her experience in regards to having this white overseer in on all of her conversations, it just takes me back to Malcolm X when him and his brother siblings were removed from his mother after his father died, and she ended up losing her mind. And what it reminds me of is just the fact that black children are treated as criminals. So the whole idea, when Thomas was talking about them being questioned separately, it's exactly what they do to criminals. If you are caught committing a crime with multiple people, they take each of the quote-unquote criminals and separate them and question them, and then they compare notes to see who's lying. That's what they do to black families. That is exactly what they do to black families and non-white families in general, but black families the most. It is because we are considered an insurgent population, and that we are considered criminals because the black codes have never ended in this country. That's why we are treated like we're treated. And as a result, that line of questioning, the overseer watching what the black case manager is doing, and then on top of that, the whole idea of separating the children to question them separately is to try and get information they can use against the parents to remove the child from that household, because they make millions of dollars off of the children that they're able to kidnap from their families. I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much, and I'll mute my line.
That will wrap us for this week's Workplace Racism, making up for all of our lost time. We'll be here tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Frantz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, 5th study session. We are moving through. I think we should be getting close to the halfway point of the book, and we'll be here this Saturday for the compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. If you have questions, guest suggestions, gripes, if you have trouble locating something in the archives, drop an email untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. Huge thanks to all the folks for dialing in, supporting. Hope it was worthy of your Thursday evening. And even thanks to the folks who dialed in last week, even though we were not on the air. Make sure we are all taking care of ourselves. Health is very important. We will not be able to perform counter-racism or anything else if we are not taking good care of ourselves. With that, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. You definitely want to make sure you are thinking clear. If race soldiers are asking if you would like to come out to their ranch and shoot guns with their white family, you want to make sure that you can give a clear and sober no and exit immediately. But I know it's the end of the summer, and I am hoping to get out and frolic and enjoy the last few days of sunshine in the Pacific Northwest. Grand, you do not want to be intoxicated as you go out to have your fun. There's too many examples of racists, badge or no, causing black people a lot of problems, unnecessary problems, because we were under the influence, had one too many to drink, or whatever the case, and could not make great decisions, and ended up having a whole lot of problems that could have been easily avoided if we had just remained sober. In fact, I just had a non-white person tell me that they got stopped, got a speeding ticket where they were under the influence, and they had to be happy to take the speeding ticket, which was not cheap because it could have been way worse. And I said, man, I have enough trouble with enforcement officers. I go outside brushing my teeth and I nearly end up in the paddy wagon. I cannot be out risking being intoxicated and then thinking that their discretion is going to be on my... No way. And you shouldn't think that way either. As a black person in the system of white supremacy, sobriety would be best. That said, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.